How's going guys, welcome to the channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the Vulpine Sinner and got harem in Helluva Boss. Part 1. Huge shout out to Kurono Dono 12 for this story. If you wants to see awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. The sounds of sirens filled the air in the distance while a wet raspy cough emitted from an alleyway. The sound of said cough originated from the form of a blonde-haired man lying on the ground in an ever-increasing in size puddle of blood. Source of said blood was the large hole in the middle of his chest. With another wet cough the man coughed out globs of blood as it trailed down the sides of his mouth. That looks like the end of the road for me. The man says to himself with a humorless chuckle. I knew I should have just continued on my way, but no, Naruto Uzumaki, you had to be a damn hero yet again. He adds before coughing a few more times. Well, look where it got you this time. Lying on your back in an alley alone, with a giant freaking hole blown in your chest, and talking to yourself like a damned crazy person. No, that gypsy woman was right all along. The now named Naruto monologues to himself before his eyes widen at the realization. However, the 21-year-old blonde-haired man's internal musings were broken by another fit of ragged wet coughing as he felt himself grow colder and colder as more of his blood exited his body. A small part of the blonde's mind was cursing his damned selfless nature, as if he had not interjected when he heard that mugger assaulting that woman he wouldn't be where he was now. However, another larger part of him was proud of the fact that he had gotten involved as it had enabled the woman to escape. Yak, no, I really hope that woman went and told the cops what was happening, as it would really suck if my body was just left here. The blonde remarks to himself weakly. He was able to tell that his wounds were fatal. After all, one doesn't usually survive a point-blank shot to the chest from a shotgun. Naruto had accepted the fact that he was going to die without achieving anything worthwhile in the time he had been alive. Hell, the man was still a virgin, never even had a girlfriend, let alone a random hookup or booty call. Reminding himself of that fact caused him to crack a small bloody smile. I wonder if the angels in heaven are sexy. He muses to himself as the light leaves his eyes and his heart stops beating, yet the small smile on his face remains. Thus was the passing of one Naruto Uzumaki, alone in an alleyway without anyone around, much like had been the life of the orphan, one of solitude and loneliness. Unknown. Blinking his eyes, Naruto found himself flying through clouds heading towards a bright light that was so blinding he had to shield his eyes. With a sudden burst the clouds around him parted to reveal a massive golden gate. The blonde was filled with an immense feeling of peace and comfort the closer he got to the gate. Tentatively he reached out towards the gate with his right hand as he heard the sounds of angelic laughter and joy. A sense of belonging filled him as he felt as though all the selfless actions he had done throughout his life finally paid off, with him seemingly being admitted to heaven for all of eternity. However, as his fingertips came within centimeters of the gate he recoils in agony as his hand feels as if he had just stuck it in acid and a huge access denied. Sign appears out of thin air in front of him. Seeing this, Naruto's eyes widen in shock and confusion at seemingly having been denied a place in heaven despite all his good deeds and selflessness. What? He asks in confusion. Though the blonde received no response to his remark as he is hit by a gust of wind and sent flying back away from the gate. His surroundings become a blur with how fast he is traveling before he finds himself surrounded by towering walls of fire. Naruto let out a blood-curdling scream of pain as he felt the flames encompass his form and his body twist and break as it seemingly changed into something new. Barely able to keep his eyes open due to the intensity of the flames, combined with the sheer amount of pain he was in, the last thing he saw before blacking out was a large red pentagram in front of him. Hell, Pride Ring. Opening his eyes, the blonde found himself back in an alley, which confused him a bit. The pain in his chest from the gunshot was gone, and as a result he could breathe normally again. Was he back home, and was the whole getting shot a crazy nightmare? Standing up, he was suddenly assaulted by all the familiar sounds of a city. Sounds like home. He thinks to himself before he ends up taking a big intake of air through his nose, causing him to cough in response. Smells like a two-weight, the blonde thought to himself upon realizing something. Why did he smell things more at a stronger level? Turning about, his eyes caught something and had him freeze in turn. There, lying against the alley wall, was a broken vanity mirror in the alley he was in. It allowed him to see his reflection. But not one he was familiar with. Instead of a blonde, tanned, blue-eyed, whiskered man was an anthropomorphic creature in a digitigrade stance. It was vulpine in nature, with yellow fur fitted in a slim yet muscular form. The slightly bushy tail situated behind him above his butt was sagged at this time due to its owner's surprised reaction. Same with the large ears on top of his head, which were like a fennec fox, but a tad shorter and sharper. Naruto would have thought this was someone else, but the reflection wore the same clothes he had today, and the reflection mirrored his movements, even when he swung his arm back, unknowingly connecting with something and sending it flying backward into the wall of the alley. Upon hearing the sound of the crashing, he turned around to see a large crater in the wall behind him, out of which was sticking the mangled form of some kind of hellish looking being that oddly made the former human, now Vulpine, of an imp. Holy moly. He thinks to himself in shock at the feat of unknowingly sending the person into a wall with such force, it creates such a large crater. Oh no, I just killed a guy, right? Naruto suddenly thinks as he doesn't see the being moving or making any noise. Walking over to the crater, Naruto grabbed a piece of glass from the ground and brought it up to the person's nose and mouth and saw no foggy buildup appeared, indicating they weren't breathing. The realization that he had just killed someone was a shock to him and thus he started to freak out a bit. However, during his freak out he took note of the large knife in the person's hand. Wait a minute, this guy was going to kill me. He rationalizes in realization as the dead guy was clearly sneaking up on him and that combined with the knife meant he was likely going to attack. He was also confused. He needed to figure things out. Walking out of the alley, Naruto's eyes went everywhere and saw all sorts of things. The people walking about were all sorts of creatures. Not just anthropomorphic animals, but all sorts of things that could come out of one's nightmares. It was really hard to tell. Focusing away from them, he gazed towards the red sky, which had a faint outline of possibly a pentagram overhead, either by some cloud formation or something else entirely. And what he saw of the pure white moon was really odd, as there was some sort of glowing ring around it, with smaller clouds coming out of it. The hell am I? The former human, now Vulpine creature says to himself in confusion at the new world he found himself in. You're in hell, kid, says some passing imp. What? He asked in reply, thinking the creature was joking. Naruto didn't get any response as the one imp kept walking on with his own business. This merely left him with more questions than answers. If he was in hell, that meant he died. But how is he living and breathing? This made no sense at all. And why was he able to see the pearly gates all before being outright rejected? As far as he recalled, he was a relatively good person. Whatever wrongs he made, he amended them to the best of his ability. Was there perhaps some stuff that wasn't good enough to be better seen by heaven? Could it be from jaywalking that one time on my way to work? Naruto shook his head. No, can't be like that. It could be fighting, but that was primarily self-defense for my job, my former job. Thinking of his one job, Naruto realized he was in a peculiar predicament. He was essentially starting over. Not just moving to another city, state or country. No, he moved to the afterlife, for Kami's sakes. He had no money to his name or anything that was his on his abrupt move, except for the clothes he was wearing now. Facing in a bit of panic, his eyes caught onto something. There was a flyer on a telephone pole. He would have ignored it if it weren't for the help wanted put out in big fonts. Walking up to it, he gave it a better look. Help wanted. Bodyguard. Pay negotiable. Call ahead to schedule an appointment. It said with one last number tag remaining on it. Looking it over several times over, reflecting on his current predicament, he came to a decision. Naruto plucked the remaining flyer tag. He then ran back to the one demon's corpse in the alley before rummaging through it and took whatever was on him. Outside of some useless junk like some bags of drugs and other crap, the Vulpine sinner found a wallet filled with money, about 500 dollars in total, with a creepy jester head printed on the slips of currency. And he also acquired the person's cell phone. It was unfortunately locked, given he didn't know of the screen password. However, there was a face recognition function, forcing Naruto to position the corpse's face in front of the screen to unlock. Once going through the settings, Naruto quickly made a new password and face recognition on the phone. He'll have to take care of the further details later like contacts and the like. But for now, he had someone to call for a job opportunity. Scene cut. Sitting at the cafe, a lone succubus was nursing herself with a cup of tea. A means to help alleviate the headache she's been having for most of today. This is Verosika Mayday, an up-and-coming pop star that was currently quite heavily down on her luck. She is a tall, hot pink-skinned succubus demon with an hergless figure featuring large full breasts and a tight heart-shaped ass. She has a long, spade-shaped barbed tail with a black tip and two black-tipped horns on the top of her head, with a black star on each side and the left horn slightly bigger than the other. She also has a pair of hot pink wings with black heart shapes at the top. Her eyes have hot pink irises with yellow sclera, and a black heart is under the corner of her right eye. Her hair is knee-length and ombre white colored with pink undertones from lighter to darker towards the tips and a darker pink streak across her bangs. Presently, she was wearing clothing which wasn't fabulous and fashionable. Loose jeans, sneakers with a baggy hoodie. Her typically free-flowing hair was tied back into a ponytail and was partially tucked into the back of her hoodie. She'd rather be anywhere else but here today. Going to a spa to have a nice pedicure and hair groomed all so nicely. However, she lacks the luxury of having such fun at this time. You see, she was here for a purpose. Getting a new bodyguard. Her last one left her in more ways than one. both in their work relationship and their romantic one as well. Rubbing her right arm, she still feels sore after the tattoo job she had done not long ago. As much as she wanted to do an extensive tattoo removal, she couldn't afford it at this time. All she could do was do a simple alteration to what she had on her arm. Fucking Blitzo. She thought with disdain. Because of her ex-boyfriend, her credit score was absolutely fucked. She cleared up the mess with her bank, but it'll take forever to have it be back what it once was. Not to mention she's gonna be very tight on money for God knows how long. In order to save on all that, she had to sell off a good number of her possessions and cancel many of her memberships and subscriptions. Hell, she even had to give up her really nice condo in Lust and move into Pride. How many more days again before my next royalty check comes in? The succubus muses to herself as it meant she would be able to treat herself to something and pay her damned bills. With this thought in mind, Veronica let out a deep sigh. She wanted to get back to work. Writing, composing and recording new songs and reaping the benefits. She only has one album and several singles, but she doubts they'll last her much longer if she doesn't make anything new. Until then, she would have to do some singing gigs at clubs and hotels she frequents. Unfortunately, those places have refused to give her a pay raise. And she's refused to take on sexual persuasions to make it happen due to her frustrations stemming from Blitzo. Now one may be wondering why Veronica was in this cafe of all places. You see, she's trying to find a new bodyguard before she could get onto the next stage of her work plans with a formal crew consisting of her makeup people, her designer, etc. And so far, she's had inadequate options. They were either scumbags, idiots, limpy passholes or people who were just frustrating. Should have made a few more anonymous tag flyers. She thought before ordering herself another cup of tea from a passing waitress. The pop star could have gone on Instagram or her other social media accounts and posted a job posting to make it easier. However, she knew what freaks are out there who would just ruin this particular opportunity. Falsifying their qualifications, using every moment they had to just gush at her or outright wasting her time instead of doing their job. No. She needed to do things a bit more discreetly. Especially with a burner phone for the interviewees to contact her. Hopefully this last one will go well. She thought with a frown. If not, back to square one and try again another day. The door to the cafe opened, having some canine-looking individual stroll in with cautious curiosity. He went up to the cashier with an inquiry in mind. If you're trying to order something, get at the back of the line. The cashier said in a bored, uncaring tone as he waited on another customer. I'm not here to order anything. The Vulpine Sinner states. I'm here about an interview. He says with a beaked eyebrow. This piqued the cashier's attention. For a bodyguard position. Seeing the Vulpine Sinner nod, the cafe worker pointed over yonder. Looking in the direction of where a certain lone succubus sat. Seeing his potential employer, Naruto walked over and cleared his throat to get her attention. Pardon me, I'm here to apply for the bodyguard position, he says a little nervously while scratching the back of his neck, which was a bit of a habit of his when he got nervous. Looking up, the succubus pop star inspected him. Veronica would have thought this cute number was a typical hellhound. However, he didn't have a few certain traits like the traditional red sclera and gray iris, while being replaced with a yellow sclera and blue iris. There was also a unique smell detected as she was getting off of him. One which she likes, i.e. a virgin. You're new, huh? She asks with a bit of a grin on her face at the in more than one way fresh meat remark. Of what? Naruto asks in confusion. Hell. Was the one-worded response he got from the succubus. Yeah. Naruto replies, still unsure of that being the place he currently was, though the whole apparent demons, imps, and now succubus were starting to make him think he was in fact in hell. How long ago did you die? Veronica asks with a raised eyebrow. Earlier today. Was the response she received surprising her a bit? That's so? He nods in confirmation. Would have thought you'd see the sights in your new form of life. Veronica remarks as usually sinners explore a bit before looking for a job if they looked for one in the first place. Would have tried exploring hell if I was an idiot. I am effectively homeless and jobless. Need to get a job first in order to help resolve the living situation and other such luxuries. Naruto says with a shrug as it didn't make sense in his opinion to explore before finding a place to stay, otherwise he would be sleeping on the streets. Veronica beeped an eyebrow. That wouldn't explain how you called if you she begins to say before being cut off by his response. Ended up killing a mugger by sheer accident. Took his stuff. I mean he won't be using him anymore. Naruto says with a bit of a shrug as it was the truth. She snorts. He clearly won't. Repositioning herself in her seat, she properly begins her interview. What did you do when you were topside? She asks, wanting a feel of what his past job experience was. A whole plethora of jobs. Some I had at the same time. Naruto answers as in his life or was it previous life now. He had a large list of jobs that he had done. Like what? Verosika asks, looking for specifics. Was a bouncer at a few nightclubs. Often tried to do a more peaceful means of defusing situations, but if push comes to shove, I'd have to get rough. Worked construction and demolition for a bit. Was a mover as well, train track worker, delivery boy, car detailer, even worked backstage at a few concerts before. Naruto says, listing off some of the various jobs he had worked. She nods, glancing back to his physique. Sure, he's not as heavy-set as some bodyguard potentials. He was lean, that much was certain from what she could picture from underneath that fur of his. But lean can often be surprising with how compact a person is. She'll just have to see for sure when out and about. Anything else? She asks with a raised eyebrow. I also worked at an animal shelter during the daytime. Seeing her brief reaction, he explained. Always wanted a pet. But my living conditions throughout most of my life were stingy on having them. So the best I could do was take care of them there. Was Naruto's reply, as it was one of the things he really wanted in his life, if only for some companionship. Anything you usually do for fun? Verosika asks with a raised eyebrow, as it sounds like all he did prior to winding up in hell was work. I didn't have much time for fun. I just kept working and working. Get up in the morning, go to work, rest for a bit before going to the other jobs. Naruto remarks a bit sheepishly. She pouts a little when hearing this. That's too bad. Nothing fun in between. The pout turned into a small smile. At least the animals at the shelter gave you some happiness, right? True. A smile appears on his vulpine maw. It's oddly the one thing I looked forward to each morning. He says, fondly remembering how the animals all seemed to brighten up and be excited whenever he came by. Hopefully now you'll find some stuff to do for fun. The pop star remarks, as if there was one thing you didn't have to worry about in hell. It was cutting loose and getting wild. That'll take a bit, if I'm being honest. Was his response, as it would take some time to get used to the idea of doing something just for fun. You've got all the time in hell now. The succubus remarked with a slight chuckle. If this job interview doesn't exactly go as intended, she might try to keep in contact with him. He's rather pleasant to talk to. Though there's a lot to be seen outside of their first interaction. Now, since I don't have a resume from you, at all for obvious reasons, I'm going to ask you these next questions which you'll just answer yes or no to. Got it? Verosika says as she finishes off her tea. Yes. Naruto replied, nodding his head and quickly following the succubus pop star's instructions. With them both on the same page, Verosika began her next series of questions. Do you have any experience in cleaning? She says, asking the first question. Yes. Naruto says with a nod of his head. Can you drive? She asks. Yes. I can drive nearly all sorts of vehicles, and I did have a motorcycle. He says, nodding his head again. Which obviously you don't have anymore. Verosika stated with a slight smirk, having him grumble in turn. Can you be flexible when handling certain tasks? She adds, asking the third question. Yes. Was his response. Do you know how to fight? She asks for the fourth question, though it's a bit redundant given what he said earlier. Yes. He responded with another nod. Dirty fighting? She specifies, as here in hell nobody fought fair. Yes. He says while he didn't like to fight dirty, he did know how to. Would you kill for me? The succubus asks, as being able to fight didn't mean much in hell if you weren't willing to end the fight once and for all. No. Naruto remarks, shaking his head at her question. Excuse me? Verosika asked, blinking a bit in surprise at the response. I won't kill discriminately. Unless they actually pose a threat or it's actually necessary for the job, then I'll have to decline and rather incapacitate them. Naruto explains and clarifies his response. This got a hum out of her. At the very least it was done differently than what some would-bes answered with. Was her thought, as a number of the people she interviewed answered much differently. The other bodyguard candidates basically answered yes to that question. A means of perhaps buttering her up most likely. Are you able to keep secrets for your employers? She says, asking the next question, and one that was a big deal for her, as the last thing she wanted was an employee blabbing her secrets to the tabloids. The amount of stars' lives ruined by their loose-lipped staff was a rather large number, and she would rather prefer to not have her name added to the ever-growing list. Yes. Naruto says with a nod of his head. Have you ever indulged in cannibalism? Verosika asks with a sigh, as this was a question she really disliked, though it was a necessary one, as the last thing she wanted is a bodyguard that might end up eating her, and not in a fun way. Naruto practically gagged on hearing this. What? He says, in absolute shock of such a question being asked in the first place. Have you? I heard what you said and no. If it was possible, Naruto would have been green-furred or pale white right now. That's a thing down here? He asks in disgust. There is a cannibal district here in Pride. In fact, there's one in Greed and Lust as well. You just have to look more closely in those parts. She says as it was most likely that a cannibal district existed in all the rings beyond just the 3 she listed except maybe Sloth, now that she thought about it. That bit of information was a bit too much for him to process. I don't, he stutters out, fumbling his words as he tries to think of a response to the appalling revelation. Do you think I'm hot? Veronica suddenly asks, wanting to not only change the topic but also trip him up a bit, so he answers honestly. Yes. He said immediately. It was at that moment Naruto's heart practically stopped. His eyes snapping wide open in shock and embarrassment as he ran that last question in his head several times over. All he could even think about doing now was try to recover from his mistake. Wait, no, yes. No. Fuck. Shit. Yes. Naruto covered his mouth, having him muffle his frustrated groan. This rush of humiliation got a good kick out of Veronica. She greatly needed this bit of humor after what she went through today. Naruto came out of his bit of embarrassment when hearing her giggle. That was an unfair quick question. He snapped once, getting his head back into things. That was a lose-lose answer and you know it. Oh? She asks coyly, all the while narrowing her eyes with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Realizing that he's gonna ruin his job interview if he didn't explain himself within the next few moments, Naruto did his best to defuse this mess he was unprepared for. I mean no offense to you at all. Naruto said quickly. But seriously, what am I supposed to say to a question like that? In this kind of situation, no less. I say you're hot to my examiner, I ruin my chances in getting a job. I lie and say otherwise, it's worse. And in a different case? Veronica asks with a raised eyebrow and sly smirk on her face. You appear to be the type of woman who'd kick my ass, depending on your mood. And since this is hell, you'd probably kill me, literally, if I say the wrong thing in the wrong context. The Vulpine replies as he had seen enough incidents to know that just because a woman didn't look strong, didn't mean she wasn't. This got a smirk out of her, feeling impressed when hearing that. Back to my earlier question, Veronica says as leans forward, her hoodie-covered breast squishing against the tabletop a bit as a result, slowly batting her eyelashes and giving him a flirtatious smile. Do you think I'm hot? She asks, saying the last part in a breathy tone of voice that sent a shiver down his spine. Swallowing a lump in his throat, he lets out a meek yes. He would be lying if he didn't think she was hot. In fact, she was absolutely breathtaking, easily among the top 3 most beautiful and sexy women he had ever seen, let alone met. Betting a genuine response on the little bit of fun she got out of this, Veronica wore a smirk as she leaned back into her chair. Next question. She says, crossing her arms under her chest and pushing them up a bit as a result. Shoot. He says, eager to move on to the next question to avoid further embarrassment. A mischievous look marred her features. Are you a flute player or lip syncer? She asks. Huh? Was the confused response from the Vulpine Sinner. Flute player? Lip syncer? Is this something music related? I've never been exactly good with music. He says honestly. Karaoke, I'm okay with, but. I wasn't talking about music. I was asking if you like meat sticks or meat pies. Veronica interrupts him, and with her mischievous look growing. Naruto gave her an odd look, wondering where she's going with this. Well, I'd go with the sticks if I'm traveling or when I need a quick snack while on the clock. Pies, however, it depends on the type of meat. He says, thinking she was talking about food. And like that, part of her joking mood got a tad sour. The bit of naivety was cute, but this was ridiculous. Oh, by Lilith's tits, I'm asking if you prefer swallowing beep or munching on beep. She says with a roll of her eyes, clarifying what she is asking. Wait, what? Naruto says, blinking owlishly at the reveal. Straight, gay, or Veronica begins to say, only to be cut off. I'm straight. Naruto practically yells in embarrassment, his fur unknowingly poofing due to his embarrassment. You don't need to be so loud. The succubus says with a deadpan look on her face at the outburst. Sorry. Naruto remarks a bit bashfully as he didn't intend to practically yell his sexual preference in a public diner. What's your favorite position? Veronica asks quickly with a coy grin on her face. What? Was the male's confused response. Are you fine with open or closed gangbangs? The succubus continues rapidly listing off her questions. Was the rather intelligible response she got. How much can you fum? Vericilla questions with a certain gleam in her pink eyes. Whoa. Naruto remarks in shock at the outlandish and rather personal question. How many times can you fum per day? The succubus continues, an eager if not hungry look forming on her face as she continues. Now wait, Naruto tries to say in order to cease the rather personal questioning, only to be interrupted. How big is your beep? Veronica finishes with a near manic look on her face as she practically licks her lips in hunger. Naruto wasn't able to answer any of this due to him being outright embarrassed on what's being rapidly asked left and right, along with the particular explicit field of such inquiries. He was practically a blushing mess and speechless. Once more, she laughed at his expense. Sorry, I'm just fucking with ya. I couldn't help myself. I needed a laugh after the shit I went through today. She says, though she was honestly rather curious about his preferences and sexual abilities. It's fine. Just try not to do that again. Naruto remarks with a relieved sigh at the embarrassing and personal questions seemingly being over and a joke. No promises. Was the impish response the succubus gave him, accompanied by a cheeky wink. Despite not getting her desired responses, she mentally noted he was not just a virgin, but a possibly closet pervert. She'll clearly need to remember these questions at a later time for her amusement. But that thought in mind, and based on his answers, she had come to a decision regarding the Vulpine sinner sitting across from her. But first name? She asks, having never actually gotten his name. He blinks in mild confusion. Naruto Uzumaki. What's yours? Arasaka Mayday. She holds out her hand to him. Don't make me regret taking you on. He smiles, realizing he just got the job. He reaches out and grasps her hand for a handshake. I wouldn't dream of it, boss. Arasaka smirks a little at that. Boss could be kinky. She says, picturing a few risque scenarios in her head as she hails the waitress so she can finally pay her bill and get out of the cafe. As she waited for this, a thought crossed her mind. Well, actually several, which stemmed from one particular detail. One last question. She asks him suddenly. Shoot. Wanna be my roommate? She asks with a bit of a grin on her face. Huh? Naruto replies with a raised eyebrow and slightly confused look on his face, as it was one thing to work for someone, but most bosses didn't also live with their employee. Few days later. Humming a small tune, the Vulpine sinner was walking through the streets of Pride. More specifically, what he now knew was Pentagram City. Naruto had learned a lot about hell since he came under Arasaka's employ. In fact, he got a crash course. For argument's sake, it was outright mandatory for him to know. From what he understood, Dante Alighieri got a good number of things right. However, the information was considered outdated due to hell having a big reconstruction in simplest terms some centuries later. The 9 circles of hell were relatively still the same, however they got a big makeover and were rearranged into the following order. Pride, wrath, gluttony, greed, lust, envy and sloth. As for the other missing rings of heresy, violence, fraud and treachery, they were merged with the other circles, or considered restricted for a whole number of reasons. Sinners, like Naruto, are forced to reside in Pride. They cannot leave the circle unless they have something called a day pass or given permission by some noble of hell's hierarchy. Looking into the distance, a frown marred Naruto's snout. This was due to him seeing Pentagram City's central clock tower. It had the typical layout of its structuring system, but with the added feature of a daily countdown to a very important day in hell. A big downside of living in Pride was the yearly purge. Like clockwork, it takes place on New Year's, where legions of exterminators arrive down from heaven to cleanse the local populace. Once an unspecified number of residents was slain or it reached the end of extermination day, the heavenly host ceases their activities and returns where they belong. Fortunately, the last purge was 2 weeks ago, so there was relatively plenty of time to prepare. Unfortunately, now Naruto has a big sense of dread now weighing on him. More so with the fact that as a sinner, he couldn't flee into one of the lower circles in order to escape the purge like many Hellborn. However, there may be an upside given his current occupation. With Arasaka's singing career, she'd be traveling through the other circles for concerts, shows, interviews, modeling, etc. As her bodyguard, Naruto will be more or less allowed to accompany her, just so long as he's in her proximity, fulfilling his job and on his best behavior. Taking that into consideration, the Vulpine sinner could be able to escape the yearly purge when his boss has to conveniently travel to a different ring around that time period. Yeah, a complicated loophole right there. Wonder what I should make for dinner tonight. He pondered to himself. Should ask Arasaka for some preferences. Oh yeah, he not only got himself a job, but a place to live as well. Call it a stretch, but he wasn't gonna turn away this 2-for-1 opportunity all that easily. He was desperate for a place to stay, and if he had to room with his boss, then so be it. Obviously some ground rules were established. The payback on his rent and utilities, since Arasaka won't take much of it out of his paychecks, he'll have to cook meals and help clean up the place on top of being her occasional errand boy. However, this would lessen over time when the succubus pop star gets more crew members. Speaking of his list of chores for the day, Naruto was currently shopping for clothes. While he was fine wearing his one outfit for a while, Arasaka thought otherwise. She all but ordered him as both her boss and roommate to go get himself a wardrobe, a week's worth of clothing at minimum, outside of the necessities. She even handed him a handful of cash to spend it on them. He put this off long enough and can't prolong it any further. Would have done it sooner, but the money he acquired from the one mugger was spent entirely on their groceries for the next few weeks. Say what you will about hell, but unlike on Earth, groceries you bought would last more than a couple days without rotting or spoiling. Though as he looked at various pairs of pants he was looking a bit lost doing this all by himself. "I don't think those are the right pants for you." A female voice says out of nowhere, catching his attention. Hearing said voice, Naruto turned and saw someone was beside him. She is an avian demon with a white mask-like face with a lanky body and unkempt gray feathers. Her eyes are pink with bright white pupils and light purple eyeshadow to go with her long eyelashes. Her dark shaggy hair feathers, which were long and reaching her mid-back, were mostly held back by a black beanie with a crown ornament either tucked or sewn into the fabric. Her attire was a long-sleeved pink dress that has a pale yellow star pattern, along with a black feathery cardigan and black-heeled boots, leggings and a thick pink choker around her neck. "Excuse me?" Naruto asks the avian in confusion. "First time shopping in hell." She clarifies, figuring he must be a new sinner given his lack of knowledge in shopping in hell. "Clothes shopping, yes." But why? Naruto begins only for the avian demon to interrupt him. "Irregular pants are for incubi, imps and sinners with humanoid legs. You however have digitigrade legs similar to hellhounds and other kinds of imps." The owl demon took the jeans out of his hands and went to grab something more appropriate. "Those jeans you snagged would actually restrict a lot of your movements, making you trip and fall," she says before handing him a pair of pants that would suit his legs. Seeing the particular look of pants now given, he looked it over before smiling. "Thanks for the help." "It's fine," she said rather blandly. As she walked away, she froze when she heard him speak. "If it's not too much trouble, do you have anything in mind that may be suitable for me?" She rounded on him with a queer look. "Excuse me? I don't work here." The avian demon remarks in slight annoyance at him, thinking she was an employee. "Right, sorry. Just a bit curious, really. I don't know any styles that may work for me." Naruto apologizes sheepishly while rubbing the back of his neck. "How so?" the owl demon asks with a queer look on her face. "Would you believe me that I often preferred wearing anything orange when I was alive and hardly anything else?" the Vulpine sinner says with a chuckle. It made her queer look shifts further. "You're joking, right?" she asks in disbelief, as there was no way anyone had such bad fashion sense. "Hey, I hardly got proper advice in clothing choices growing up. I just threw on what was available and that was it," Naruto says in defense of his clothing choices and getting a snort from the girl. After some time negotiating, the owl demon relents and assists, relieving Naruto on his plight. Once grabbing the assistance of a store employee, the owl demon helped Naruto out in finding a week's worth of attires. She practically had a model for her and one store employee for a while, much to his embarrassment. It took a while, but now Naruto was carrying out a few bags of clothes in his hands, once making the big purchase. Once checking the remaining amount Virasaka gave him, a thought was voiced out to the owl demon. "Do you want to grab something to eat? My treat," he asks, wanting to repay the owl demon for her assistance. "You don't have to," she replies, not wanting to be rude and imply that she assisted him to get something out of helping him. "I insist. Consider it a way of me paying you back for helping me on clothes shopping." Naruto insists, as it felt wrong in his mind to have her help him and not pay her back somehow. Humming a little, the owl demon shrugs. "Sure, why not?" She relents, as in all honesty she was kinda hungry. Smiling, Naruto led her to the place he and Virasaka dined at yesterday. "Hey, I never bothered to get your name." The Vulpine sinner properly introduces himself. "Name's Naruto," he says after realizing he never even introduced himself to her and vice versa. "Octavia," she says, introducing herself after a slight pause before the two went to a nearby fast food restaurant. As they dined on lunch, the two had a good chat with one another. The owl demon found the Vulpine sinner a surprisingly good conversationalist. Only minutes in with him into their meal and she found herself laughing or avidly listening to most of the things he said. Eventually, when the topic of music came up, Naruto ended up spilling a particular bit of information about one of her favorite music artists. "Shut up. You're working for her?" she says in hushed surprise at the reveal. "I am," Naruto replies with a small chuckle. "Prove it," Octavia remarks with a skeptical look on her face. "Well, I just started working with her the other day, so I don't have a work stub." Naruto fished out his hellphone and pulled up the photo gallery to show an assortment of pics of him and Virasaka at their apartment. "Maybe these work." "You're living with her?" Octavia asks in a hushed tone of disbelief. "As her bodyguard," he says before putting his phone away. "Hey," she offered, "and I wasn't going to be able to find any place anytime soon to sleep at. So my choices as a sinner are rather limited." "Count yourself lucky," the avian demon remarks with a slightly annoyed tone, as there were times she would give anything to not be a royal and instead just be a normal Hellborner sinner. "Every day since I've been here," Naruto remarks with a shrug, as it was the truth. In his brief time in hell he had seen just how dangerous and lacking in employment it was, thus why he felt extremely thankful that Virasila had hired him. Time passed as they dined away in their meal, and it was time for them to part ways. However, they decided to exchange numbers, no doubt wanting to chat with each other later. As the two left the restaurant and were about to go their separate ways, a limo soon pulled up, having him blink in confusion. "It's for me." Octavia clarifies as an Im came out from the driver's seat, went over and opened the back passenger door. "I regret wanting to ask," but Naruto begins to say before Octavia interrupts him. "I'm a noble, yes." She admits with a sigh and feeling as if he was going to start treating her differently due to the reveal. "Didn't want to be." Naruto begins to apologize only to be cut off by the avian noble again. Offensive. "It's fine." As she stepped in, the imp closed the door and made their way to the driver's seat. Moments later, the limo took off, no doubt back to where the demon noble resides. Just as Naruto was about to head back to his and Verosika's place with his bags of clothes, he felt his cell phone vibrate. Fishing it out, he saw a text message from Octavia. "Had fun today. We should do this again sometime." Smiling, the Vulpine Sinner texted back. "Same here. And we should if you want to." 3 weeks later. Riding through a security gate, a black sedan came on through before the gate closed behind them. Upon parking, a series of flashes appeared around it as the driver came out to open up the back passenger door. From there, Naruto steps on out first before turning back and holding out his hand. Another hand came out soon after, grasping his as its owner stepped out onto the pavement with the flashes becoming more frequent. Presently, the pop star wore a puffy white coat with a pair of designer pants and heels, with a pair of rustic bronze-framed, pink heart-lensed sunglasses. The latter item which Naruto gifted her one day, and she hardly does a show without them since. But Verosika in the spotlight, Naruto went to work in defending her, thus starting another day of his bodyguard position. It wasn't his first day, given he had several dozen under his belt when heading out with Verosika for some studio meetups and other factors for music artists. Not to mention some club and hotel gigs so she can get some additional income. However, this was his first day of bodyguarding Verosika on a big-time gig. Both he and her originally expected it to be at a small one, but Verosika's agent was able to surprisingly pull some strings at the last minute and have her perform at a stadium. With a mixture of her Instagram and other social media popularity and promoting some new songs, it became a sold-out show overnight. Verosika waved at the crowd and went to take a few selfies with some fans before giving out some autographs. Seeing this, Naruto leaned in and spoke a bit loud in order for his boss to hear him. "We should keep moving, boss." Yeah. She drawls out as she followed her bodyguard. After the pair entered the pop star's dressing room, Naruto stood on guard by the room's entrance. In the middle of the space, Verosika was in a creamy white dress top with a short skirt with matching knee-high boots. Around her was a number of imps, Succubi and Kyubi and sinners working and getting her all prettied up for the show. "How she lookin', Kiki?" Naruto asks another occupant of the room. "Fantastic, Naru." The person the Vulpine Sinner was addressing was a succubus wearing a fishnet shirt, showing off her curvaceous hergless figure with black X-shaped pasties over her nipples, making her breasts jiggle a little, and a black skirt that covered her waist down to halfway on her thighs with a small slit on the side. She had 2 bright red skinny horns on top of her head with black tips, matching bright red skin tone, bright pink eyes with normal pupils against her yellow sclera, and 2 petite demonic black wings. She had long flowing hair that started off as a dark gray color and slowly faded into a lighter shade. She had 2 mismatching stockings, a medium-size one on her left leg that stopped halfway up her thigh, and a long one that stopped just below her cut-off skirt with matching black high-heeled boots. Taking a glance over to his roommate, Naruto gave a vulpine smile to the designer. "Wouldn't expect anything less out of you," he remarks, complimenting her. Kiki gave a giggle. "Flatter. You know I can't take all the credit." This succubus is a neighbor of the pop star and her bodyguard at their apartment complex and had a rather complicated backstory about her involving an ex-boyfriend kicking her out after she caught him sleeping with their landlord in lust and suing them shortly after. She had a hard time finding work once moving into Pride, forcing her into being a prostitute for a time in order to not sleep on the streets. That more or less ended after a combination of her finding a roommate and meeting Naruto and Verosika. On the latter, it was when they were at a club for a gig and she was briefly working as a waitress. One thing led to another and she became Verosika's makeup and hair stylist. La 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 la. Verosika sang out using some vocal exercises to warm up her voice before her performance. "Now don't stress out those pipes," says an afro-haired succubus. "Don't want to have you lose your voice." "Easy for you to say, Ms. Deepthroat for days." Verosika jabs playfully. Said Ms. Deepthroat was Coco, a succubus with a darker shade of red skin, long brunette hair puffed up in a large afro that almost hid her 2 small horns, and brown eyes contrasting her yellow sclera. She had a loose tube top with a skull design on the lower right-hand side of the top and a black sports bra underneath, holding her modest breasts and showing her toned midriff, and had cut-off jean shorts that were slanted against her hips, with fishnet leggings, showing she wasn't wearing any kind of underwear, and dark purple high-heeled boots. Her small petite black wings fluttered slightly with her arrow tip wagging to and fro. "No, that title goes to Milky." Coco replies with a devilish grin and chuckle. At the mention of said individual, a few knocks were heard at the dressing room door. Naruto opened it up to reveal a short-stacked succubus with sideways swept hair, long eyelashes framing her eyes with her pink eyes against her yellow sclera, and a dark pink arrow-tip tail. She had a one-sleeve tube top that only covered her left arm and chest area, and Daisy Duke shorts with knee-length boots. Her full lips appeared constantly pouty, while her petite wings flapped on occasion. In her one hand was a large bag of assorted items, while the other had a case of canned beers. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a bitch, and parking was horrendous, even with my pass." Milky strolled in and placed the items on a nearby chair. "Got Verosika's jizz juice bottles, lozenges, 2 Wrath Monster drinks, a case of beer." Milky is Kiki's roommate who has more or less become an errand girl, or a gopher with how others label the title. She mostly did work with Heldash to go around Pride to deliver all sorts of items and goods from point A to point B, however it took some convincing from Kiki's part to focus less on her one job and work more for Verosika, as the pay's better, along with some later benefits. "Hey Milky. We were just talking about you." Coco remarks with a chuckle. "Talking shit behind my back again?" Milky playfully says. "More of your unique titles," was Verosika's reply with a cheeky grin, a roll of her eyes, and a shrug of her shoulders, getting a grin from the short-stacked succubus. One such benefit from going full-time with Verosika was Milky having some fun blowing all sorts of demons and outright draining them dry far more than what other succubus and incubus could possibly do. In fact, she was able to get the crew more pay from several club and hotel owners in the past from her unique services. "Mind keeping still a bit longer?" spoke a blonde succubus, using pins with a sewing needle to repair the worn outfit. "Need to get the last bits kept together." "Sorry Apple." Verosika says an apology to the succubus in charge of making sure her outfits were in good condition or making any alteration, should they be needed. Apple is a succubus with medium-length blonde hair tied in a high ponytail with 2 bangs framing her round face, large pink eyes with yellow sclera, muted pink skin, a long pink tail with 2 black markings on the outer edge of the arrow tip, 2 small wings on her upper back, 2 skinny horns with black tips, and sharp teeth behind her cheerful smile. She had on a black strapless bra that was proudly shown through her denim overalls that stopped just below her buttocks, showing off her toned legs and red blood design near the straps, 2 small bracelets on her right arm, and designer strap heels. She had a tattoo of a snake coiling around her left thigh while going through a bitten apple. The blonde succubus is Verosika's outfit designer. Naruto met her when he was clothes shopping with Octavia, and a day or so after when Verosika mentioned she needed an outfit designer, the Vulpine had immediately thought of her. After making an arranged meeting, Apple was hired on. And it was through Apple that she brought in her girlfriend Coco with her to help with singing among a few other necessities. Looking at the nearby wall clock, Naruto spoke up. "Almost time, people." Hearing this announcement, the others finished getting Verosika ready, and after several more minutes, the pop star with her crew in tow, left the dressing room and headed towards the stage. As they walked towards the stage before Naruto and the others broke off to take up their guard positions, the sinner reflected on her singing. He got to hear her sing back at their place and on the stage on the demos with her warm-ups. The songs were quite good from what he heard. It was like he got a private show. Now she was going to be on stage singing in front of a massive audience. As much as he wanted to stand or sit with the other attendees, he had a job to do. Pressing the device in his ear, Naruto spoke up as he scanned the crowd for any potential threats to his boss. "Josh, Ace. Everything good on the perimeter?" he asks. "Looks good so far, Naruto." Josh's voice is heard saying over the radio from his position. "No issue on my end," Ace adds. "Alright. Let's be sure we keep it that way," Naruto says with a nod as he continues to scan the crowd. He coordinated with a pair of incubuses, Josh and Ace. Both were here from a temp agency to help him out on security for the gig. While Naruto could perhaps handle things on small-time shows, this required some additional muscle. After all, he was just one person. He couldn't be everywhere at once. Depending on how things go with tonight's gig, Naruto could get Verosika to officially hire the pair on. The sinner then made his way over to the DJ booth, where all of the music for Verosika's performances came from instead of them needing a band. "How's it sounding, Cat?" he asks the man behind the sound booth. "Alright for the most part." The one incubus frowned when checking the soundboard. "Just having to double check so no one messed around with my shit again." He grumbles in annoyance as it wouldn't be the first time it had happened if someone did mess around with it. Cat is an incubus with a stylish hairdo, two skinny black horns, a long black tail with muted red skin, and was wearing a sleeveless maroon-colored hoodie, blue jeans and dark shoes. His pink eyes shined brightly against his yellow sclera and two medium-sized black demonic wings as he appeared to be a pretty boy. Naruto had met Cat at one of Virasuka's gigs. He was an inspiring DJ in charge of the lighting and sounds for the club he was working part-time at. There was some roughhousing scuffle with some patrons, causing Cat's boss to fire him as a fallout. The Vulpine Sinner felt bad for his predicament, having him introduce the incubus to Virasuka to see his worth. Worked quite well as Cat helped improve a number of her songs. Alright, about to begin the opening beats. Cat said to Naruto. You should do your thing, man. Will do. With this said, the Vulpine Sinner got to place as he awaited Virasuka to come on stage. When the opening tunes began playing on the speakers, the audience went wild. They were cheering in anticipation for the pop star to make her entrance. At the middle of the stage, a section opened up to let the fog machine do its work. The vapors spilled out and quickly filled the stage as several lights went out for some dazzling show work. Before long, Virasuka appeared in the dense smoke. Hello you fine folks of Pride. She cried out into the microphone. You ready to bone down to Bone Town? From the video monitors, the camera people went to work to show the live feed of her so the audience far away in the stadium seats can see the pop star relatively up close. This is your final boarding call. The succubus said also sensually. All aboard. And now it begins. Thought the Sinner bodyguard as he saw Virasuka begin her new opening number Vacate to Bone Town. For the next 2 hours, Virasuka sang a great number of her songs. Both from her first album and singles to one she had recently written for the upcoming album. They were loved by all of the attendees. The concert would have been longer if Virasuka had an opening band playing to help warm up the crowd, but this event was all for her. For the duration of the time, Naruto, Josh, Ace and many of the other security personnel had to do their perimeter sweeps to be sure everything was fine and well. Not to mention being sure the stage area was relatively clear of everyone not authorized in being there. One such instance, some fans usually try to do crowd surfings once getting on stage only to jump off of it so the audience can carry the person away. While it may seem relatively fine, it was more of a safety hazard with a gap being placed between the initial audience and the stage. Another issue was a few fans managed to get past the barrier during the big orgy incident on one of Virasuka's really sensual, lust-filled songs. Naruto quickly swooped in, snagged and tossed them back into the orgy pit. Suffice to say, it wasn't a pretty sight. Not much went on after the orgy incident, aside from a few hiccups. No concert, let alone performance, was perfect. Yet it went quite well and was successful in the end. Tugging her last bottle of jizz juice, Virasuka yelled out into the microphone. You've been a wonderful audience. Good night. This last one's for you. She screamed as she sang her last song for the evening. Backstage, Naruto drank from a Wrath Monster can in order to keep him alert. Never standing in one place for too long, but keeping close to the stage area. From many times in his life and now afterlife, he had found that the last number of a performance sometimes makes the audience go wild and try to do something stupid. Fortunately for him, everything was relatively under control. WTH the final song of the night finished, Virasuka gave a playful kiss to the crowd before walking off stage, only to be greeted by her roommate who handed her a cup of water. How was I? She asked after chugging the cup in one go. Her appearance was slightly disheveled and glistening with a thin layer of sweat, but she still looked amazing. Naruto flashed her a cheeky smile. You were great, boss. Great. Was that all? She asked playfully. He playfully pondered for a moment. No, I was wrong. He gave her a vulpine smile this time. You were fantastic. The succubus giggled as she walked past him. Walking down the metal stairs, Virasuka wore a smile as she heard the audience cheer after the successful performance. Behind her was her friend and bodyguard as they were soon greeted by the others of her posse, who quickly congratulated her as the concert was over and everything was all great. Alright. Let's head back to the dressing room, and Naruto began to say before he cut off as a certain noise could be heard. There were sounds of commotion coming from one side of the backstage area. Looking over, Naruto and the others saw an assortment of demons breaking through the gate and began swarming the area. Naruto snarled when he saw this. Who left that gate open? Not me. It was locked before the show. Ace calls out in shock as he had even triple locked the gate with freaking thick chains when he locked it up. Naruto shook his head with a growl hearing this. The Sinner will be finding out answers later. For now, his top priority was getting Virasuka out of here and to safety. Get more security over here, now. Naruto barked out before dragging the pop star away from the flooding crowd. As much as he wanted to get her back into the dressing room and bunker down until the heat died down, Naruto knew this assortment of crazed fans would do more damage than what typically happens in the human world. For all he knew, these demons could end up breaking down the dressing room door and make things worse. "Verosika. We love you," cried out a good dozen of the demons and sinners who broke into the backstage area. "Shit. We gotta move," Naruto yelled out before he grabbed hold of Verosika. Keeping his boss and friend close, the Vulpine Sinner hurried her and the rest of the crew along towards the garage and their planned exit should the shit hit the fan. However, upon nearing the sedan they came in, someone practically lunged from behind a pillar, taking the pop star by surprise. Naruto reacted quickly, putting himself in harm's way so Verosika wouldn't be attacked. He felt a searing pain on his side before tackling the assailant into the pillar. They fought for dominance and in the struggle, the Vulpine Sinner saw the person had a knife in his hand. Registering this, Naruto quickly grabbed a hold of the assailant's neck, twisted him around before ensnaring the arm and broke it. As the person went down, Naruto quickly delivered a quick but brutal punch to the imp in the temple, thus knocking him out if not killing him for good measure. With the assailant down for the count, Naruto looked over and saw one of the incubus on the security team he was briefly familiar with, Ace. He called out, getting his attention. The aforementioned incubus rushed over to help secure the assailant in the event said assailant was still alive. As he did, Ace saw the blood on the ground and his eyes traveled up where it originated. "Shit man, you're bleeding," the incubus remarks upon seeing the patch of red forming on the Vulpine Sinner's shirt and fur. "Better me than her," Naruto said to him, dismissing the injury. "I'm getting her out of here," he adds. "Go do that, man. We got this," said Ace, gesturing to Josh who was rushing over by this point in order to back up his fellow incubus. Coming over to Verosika, Naruto saw she was in shock and hardly registered anything. Yet her eyes were darting all over the place as her breathing became erratic. Dragging her along, the Vulpine Sinner rushed the pop star into the sedan, where the driver was startled by the sudden arrival. "Drive," Naruto harshly growled. The driver hit the gas pedal, and the sedan took off into the night and away from the stadium. Sounds of erratic breathing could be heard in the car. Looking back over, Naruto saw Verosika doing her best to control her breathing. Reaching to the cubby containing an assortment of drinks, the Vulpine Sinner pulled out a club soda, cracked open the lid, and gently brought it to the succubus. "Take this. It should help take an edge off the shock." She did as instructed, but only as a dainty sip. "Don't be shy. Drink some more." She followed through, practically chugging the rest of the can before tossing it across the back seating space. Soon after, she was shaking a bit more while doing her best to keep her sobs in check. However, they more or less broke through when Naruto wrapped an arm around her and pulled her into a hug. There. It's okay," he whispers into her ear, stroking her long locks in the process. "You're safe now." It was by this point did Verosika feel something sticky and wet on her hand. Not something she was used to when she rubbed the substance against her fingers. Pulling it back to see, she flinches and looks back to the source before putting two and two together. "You're hurt," she stated in a shocked tone, her eyes wide at the sight of his blood on her hand and the slowly growing patch of red on his fur and shirt. "This is nothing," the Vulpine remarks, once again dismissing the injury as she was safe and that's all that mattered to him. "Nothing? Are you kidding?" she balks before turning to the driver. "Take us to the hospital," she demands fiercely. "No," Naruto spoke out in turn. "Take us back home." She rounds back to her bodyguard and friend. "Naruto. We need to get you to the hospital." Verosika protests, wanting him to see a doctor. "You need to be back home and safe." Naruto counters with a shake of his head as her safety took priority to him and the wound itself didn't seem that bad. "You were stabbed." The succubus all but yells at him, wanting him to take this seriously. "I'm cut, there's a difference," Naruto states with a bland look, causing Verosika to let out a huff of frustration at his refusal to be seen by a doctor and downplaying the situation. However, it didn't lessen her worry of the sinner beside her. 1 hour later, Verosika's apartment. The duo had made it back to their shared apartment without further incidents and waited a bit for the others to arrive. After roughly a half hour or so of waiting, the others walked through the apartment door. As the others began to settle in and unwind with a drink or two after the ordeal at the concert, Apple got to work stitching up Naruto's wound, given how he refused to see a doctor. She and the others were worried about what happened after they got out of the crazed mob that flooded the backstage area. Through a group text chat, Verosika's initial crew learned of what happened with Naruto getting stabbed, cut by a knife. "I'm no doc or anything, but you should consider yourself lucky," said the blonde succubus, putting the last of the stitches in, all before wrapping up the wound with a gauze. "Though I recommend going to a hospital in the morning for a better look." She may be the dress designer, but knows her way around in patching up a person with her steady hand. "Thanks for the help, Apple," Naruto chuckled out. "I'd do it myself, but I'm not all that great with a needle." "Try not doing that again," the seamstress warned him. "No promises," Naruto remarks with a chuckle before gulping as he sees the warning look she is giving him. "Call us if you need anything," says Coco with the others nodding. "We are literally next door if something comes up." Kiki adds in, volunteering herself and Milky in the process. "Will do." The Vulpine Sinner replies with a nod. "And where's Veronica?" Milky asked, curious as to where their boss had gotten to after the whole ordeal at the concert. "Showering," was Naruto's answer as he nudged his head in the direction of the bathroom. In the bathroom, Veronica was doing her best to calm down after what happened. The falling water helped hide the tears coming down from her eyes as she cleaned herself. Her mind reflects back what happened earlier. Having it play out on how it actually occurred to the worst possibilities. This shit happens. It's why nobles and celebrities often live in ivory towers and have all sorts of security, because all it takes is one psycho fan to end their life or worse. Yet as she replayed the events of the night in her head over and over again, she could only think of one thing. If it wasn't for him, who knows what could have happened to me? She thought with a growing frown. Lying on his bed as the others had left to their own apartments, Naruto was about to fall asleep when he heard a light tapping on his bedroom door. Getting up, with a brief mild discomfort, he went to it and opened to reveal Veronica there. She presently wore her pajamas, which were a bit loose, allowing her to reveal her black bra and panties. And she also wore a concerned look on her face which was framed by her damp hair. "Is something wrong?" he asks with a raised brow, thinking something must be wrong for her to have that look on her face. "And can I sleep with you tonight?" She looks away nervously, rubbing her arm and biting her lower lip. I don't feel safe," after she says, trailing off, and a soft reaction marred Naruto's face as he nodded and allowed her to come in. She got onto the bed first and pulled the covers over before lifting the sheets to help allow him to come in. Turning to his side, he faced away from Veronica so he could end up giving her some space. However, he felt the bed shift a little as she drew closer to him. Feeling her form pressed up against his own, his heart rate suddenly spiked up a little. "You know," Naruto turned his head slightly to see Veronica looking at him. Her pink eyes softly glowed in the dark, adding a sense of allure to her beauty. "I usually sleep with less clothes on." His throat felt dry all of a sudden. He stammers, unsure of how to react to the rather sinful image that popped into his mind as a result of her statement. "And have I told you that you're very soft, firm and warm?" Veronica teases with a coy smirk on her face as she trails her index finger up his broad furred chest. Being a bit daring, she reaches up and gives him a quick peck on the lips before snuggling into his back, not seeing his outright blushing, flustered state. "Thank you," she mumbled before exhaustion finally took over her. Recompassing himself, Naruto hesitantly moves his body around so he can envelop her into a warm embrace. He did wince a little in discomfort from the shift of position, but it was a small cost to help out his friend in her time of worry. "You're welcome," he said in turn as sleep claimed him as well. Months later. Blinking awake, Naruto softly yawned and rubbed his eyes to get the gunk and crusties out of them. Before long, he soon registered the unusual yet familiar weight on his body. Looking down, he saw Veronica lying against his body. More specifically, her head resting on his chest area near his collarbone where she softly breathed. Her arms draped around him and her legs nearly wrapped around his own. And she was all but naked as her breasts, which were confined behind a lacy bra, were pressed against his upper abdominals, with her matching panties pressed against his thigh, while her tail laid motionless but briefly wrapped around his own. Again. Naruto states in thought. How many nights in a row was this now? After that stadium gig, Naruto willingly allowed her to sleep with him side by side. Him comforting her as much as he could so she could rest easily after her big scare. Not just for herself but towards him. It was afterwards that things progressed in a different manner. On most nights since, Naruto knew he slept alone, but come morning, he found himself with someone else. The same applied whenever he found himself napping on the couch. Always the same person. Always Veronica, who was quite the cuddler. Like he's one to argue as he's a cuddler as well, which makes it all worse. One such proof was one of their crew taking a photo of them napping on the couch and sharing it with the rest. It was both embarrassing and wholesome. It was hard for him to properly focus on resting when he feels her on him all so intimately. How her succulent melon-sized breasts pressed against his arm and her long smooth legs wrapped around his. How she held him like an oversized plush doll or a full-sized body pillow. How soft she was and the way she smelled. The combination of all these created a hurricane of sex appeal that aroused him to no end. Speaking of, his mind soon finally caught up to him from waking up, finally registering the soft rubbing against his groin. Of his morning erection growing underneath the succubus. Naruto gritted his teeth, doing his best to not rise any further, lest he inadvertently alert his bedfellow to his predicament. Why does she keep doing this to me? He thought with growing annoyance. He controlled his breathing to hopefully calm his rapidly beating heartbeat. He did his best to hide his morning wood from her out of embarrassment among other factors. always doing his best to hopefully get up and out of her clutches before she woke up and notices his raging arousal. It happened a few times of her catching him with it since this all began, and it was hard to look at her on those particular days. Remembering from a certain show he watched when he was once a human, he had to work this out on his escape from her embrace. But first, glancing over at the other side of the bed, he mentally frowned. Look at all that space over there. It's ridiculous. You could fit another person there like Milky and Focus. He thinks to himself before reminding himself of his current situation lest he make it worse. Shaking his head, he slowly formulated some makeshift calculations. Wrapping his one arm around her also gently, he hears a small cute sound from her. Something which helps signify she's still slumbering. He then rolls with her back to the other side of the bed, all before gently letting go and rolling away in the process of her moving. Freedom. He mentally cheered, seeing he was out of her clutches. He gently got out of the bed and headed towards the window and pulled the curtain open. There he saw the rain coming down from the heart-shaped clouds in the sky. Another rainy day in Lust. He muses to himself with a deadpan look, as lately it had been raining nearly every day in the Lust ring. Shortly after the stadium gig, several changes happened for Veronica and her crew. A few new additions tagged along in the form of Ace and Josh, as they all moved over to Lust from Pride. This was possible due to the large influx of income they acquired from the concert and Veronica demanding recompense of what happened to Naruto with the attack. Naruto thought that last part was too far, but the pop star thought otherwise. In the end, they now resided in a luxurious penthouse apartment. However, despite how nice the place really was, the move got Naruto rather nervous. While he can't properly reside in Lust due to his sinner status, he's allowed due to his employment with Veronica. He thought of it as some sort of green card or a work visa in terms of comparison. Yet since the move, he had to be extra good and obedient on his behavior, not like he already was, or else he'd risk being deported back to Pride and be in loads of trouble alongside Veronica. And it was good so far as quite recently he dodged a purge bullet that went on 2 weeks ago. He didn't get to experience it due to living in Lust, but had seen the aftermath with the photos and scraps of video feed of the executioners doing their job. The things he saw made the graphic photos of war back in the human world pale in comparison. Now that I think about it, Naruto went over to the nightstand and picked up his phone. Yup, today's the day. He then pockets the device into his pajama pants. Okay, first agenda for the day, start making breakfast for myself and the others. He shifts in place before realizing the tightness in his pajama bottoms. Right after I take care of this. Walking ever so quietly to the bathroom, he misses the displeased look of Veronica as she opens her eyes with a frown. She was more or less awake by this point. Motherfucker did the hug and roll on me. She growled in thought. I fell for that again. She had woken up sometime before him, hoping to give him a good morning hello in bed in a rather flirtatious way. Yet she always drifted back to sleep due to how comfortable he was. Of how his ribs were positioned the right way that it was quite the natural pillow. And his strong, steady heartbeat lulled her back to sleep like so many times when sneaking back into his bed once he was out like a light. She only woke back up after his hug and roll technique in the attempt of escaping her clutches. I swear I need to start getting one of the other girls to start sharing the same bed as us. As that way they could sandwich him between them and make his little escapes nearly impossible. Veronica knew the other succubi in her posse had quite the attraction to the Vulpine Sinner. Not that she can blame them, given how great of a person he was with his kind and loving nature. She, however, called dibs on him and taking his cherry. But after that, then the other girls would have a shot at him. In the meantime, Veronica began to entice him, doing much to gain his attention with her advances. Laundry time, washing her car, occasionally cooking meals alongside him, snuggles on the couch when watching movies and shows. However, his resistance to her advances had been growing for all this time, much to her annoyance. Of course it's been extra frustrating for her as she hasn't fucked a man since her breakup with Blitzo. And the fine piece of man living with her has unintentionally goaded her on all this time with his actions and being unintentionally sexy. Her girls have been able to satisfy such urges, but they can only go so far until she finally snaps and needs to fuck her bodyguard and friend. Letting out a sigh and finally rising from his bed, the succubus pop star trudged out of her bodyguard's bedroom and made her way to the kitchen. Good morning, Veronica. Naruto said by the stove with an apron on. I've got one of your favorites. You keep making them just about every morning. She says with a tired grin. I do have to make a spread of just about everything as some of the others like to stop by for breakfast. He says before he releases an annoyed sigh. Wish they could just text ahead of time instead of barging in and expecting a meal. The Vulpine Sinner grumbles a bit. Since she and the rest of her posse live relatively close to each other here in Lust, they typically stop by at someone's residence to share either breakfast or dinner, depending on the day. More often than not, Veronica's group keeps coming over to their place, making Naruto work a bit more on the morning meal. Looking towards the stove, Verosika envisioned Naruto in a naked apron approach. Such a thing was a tantalizing thought. Now that I think about it, maybe I should do that one day. She thought, drinking from her coffee mug. Actually, wake up early and prepare him breakfast with that on. And only that. Such a thing will be difficult to do, given her present sleep habits. But now a determined thought took center stage. What's on today's agenda? She asks him once he served her a nice platter of deviled ham, hash browns, hard-boiled eggs, French toast. Beside it was a small plate of pomegranate fruit and oranges. Pulling out a notepad, Naruto read off the list. There's a meeting with your agent pertaining to your next hell tour, as the last one was successful. Naruto said aloud. Another meeting about a number of showings in the living world. He squinted his eyes a little. I think it's with some group called Suck Incorporated. Sounds about right. Verosika remarks with an uncaring shrug of her shoulders, the action causing her breasts to jiggle in her bra and drawing Naruto's attention to them briefly before he catches himself. Depending on how that goes, I'll be scheduling quite the number of days off. The Vulpine remarks. This earned a pout from her which was hidden by her cute mug as she drank her morning coffee. Since he was a sinner, he wasn't generally able or even allowed to go to the living world. Such a thing would be greatly breaking a bunch of laws. Him traveling through the other circles, let alone living in lust, was outright stretching it to the limit. As much as Verosika and the others wanted him to come to the living world for the gigs, he was forced to stay behind. Not that he really argued. They were considered his additional vacation days as he got to do a number of things by himself. Either staying in the apartment in Lust or going back to Pride to hang out with Octavia or something else on his mind before their return. To somewhat wrap up the day, Naruto had a nervous cough. You are invited to attend a party in Gluttony. She smiled sweetly in response. Ah, one of those. That'll be great. She says with a hint of an eager tone to her voice. Just promise me you'll lay off on the drinking. Naruto asks with a bit of a pleasing look to his face. He had been going to more parties and events as of late. Yet he wasn't actually attending them, more like following Verosika as her shadow. Being within 5 or so feet within her vicinity, he constantly tails her in order to keep her fine and well. This meant he couldn't exactly enjoy the festivities like indulging himself with much food and drink. Yet he considered that a good thing to a degree. Especially since lately he has been noticing how she's been drinking more often at the events, and it's becoming a bit concerning in his eyes. Gonna be hard with what she has to offer. She says jokingly, missing the worried look marrying his face. Later that day, Gluttony. Upbeat music filled the air as many party-goers went about the party palace. Many sorts of imps, succubus incubus, Baphomet, hellhounds and even aquatics from greed and envy were eating and drinking to enjoy their time here. Even going crazy on the dance floor with the music raging about. Well, all except one. Amongst the crowd of patrons, Naruto was hardly partaking of anything. Only watching and observing the beehive aesthetic of the building. Being here merely brought him all sorts of memories, making him think of what he missed out on when he was human. The various parties he was invited to when in school, but had to decline. Mostly some excuses of him needing to focus on some project or having a shift the next day. In reality, he was just socially awkward back then. Not really knowing what to do and not being taken advantage of in the process when he was in the orphanage to being out on his own. Sometimes he wondered if he really made the right decisions at the time. More so for now so he can have a proper idea how to feel more fitted in with this party environment as opposed to the record label events and other work events he attended. I should be enjoying being here, but I'm not. His eyes scanned the crowd before finding a familiar face. She most certainly is. Walking over to her, once maneuvering around many attendees, he found Verosika. And judging by her appearance, she's been indulging herself too much on the Beelzebus. Verosika, we talked about this. Talked about what? The succubus asks with a slight slur to her speech, signifying that she was clearly intoxicated. You're drinking too much. Naruto states with a flat look on his face unamused by her excessive partaking of liquor. Come on, Naru, it's a party. I'm supposed to enjoy myself here. Verosika protests with a whine at him trying to limit her partying. Naruto reaches out and places a hand on her shoulder. Boss, seriously, you need to, he begins to say only to be cut off by her action. Said action was Verosika brushing him off and growling slightly. I can stop when I want to. She takes another swig of the Beelzebus cup and walks off. He tries to go after her, but the other party attendees block his path. With the pop star going off on her own, making Naruto lose sight of her. He growled in his frustration, making him want to pull his own hair off. Hey, is everything alright, man? Naruto glanced over, seeing a Lupin hellhound with a dark monotone gray color scheme. He is extremely muscular and has a scar on his left eye with slightly ripped ears. On his left arm has a black fur pattern resembling a wolf's head tattoo. He wears a ripped leather jacket with the sleeves torn off, effectively making it a vest, with glowing red spikes on what is left of the sleeves. He also wears a black undershirt as well as ripped grey pants. Everything's fine, Tex, I think. Naruto says, though honestly he is unsure himself. Tex, or rather Vortex for his full name, gave an unsure look. Didn't look like that to me. Just trying to stop her from doing something stupid. The Vulpine Sinner remarks with a tired sigh. With what I see here often, I can relate. Tex remarks with a bit of a smile and a shake of his head. Naruto thinks back on how first met Tex when he came into Gluttony for the first time during Varosuke's Hell Tour. They hit it off rather quickly and struck a good friendship with the Hellhound's laid-back and friendly personality. The next encounter they had was on the next day at the concert, only to realize he was accompanying his girlfriend for a backstage meeting with the pop star and her crew. One who outright scared the living shit out of Naruto upon realizing who she was. I don't know about you, but Varosuke ain't doing so hot. Hearing the feminine voice had the Vulpine Sinner stiffen in his spot before turning to see Tex's girlfriend. She is a tall, fox-like demon with insect-like features, such as multiple arms, a pair of antennae attached to her large ears, and a small pair of insect wings on her back. She has yellow and pink striped fur and black markings that give a dripping appearance down her forearms and digitigrade legs. Her hair on top of her head and tail appears to be a mixture of honey and lava lamp fluid, which glows bright pink, blue and orange, with her stomach also resembling the flowing mixture. Her outfit consists of a black choker around her neck, a pink off-the-shoulder crop top with a heart-shaped cutout, white markings underneath turning into a paw with claws, a black low-cut bra, and a pair of lighter pink short shorts with trim the same color as her top. While she was outright hot in Naruto's perspective, all that was replaced with anxiety-induced terror. "Hi, Queen Beelzebub." Naruto stutters out nervously. The Queen of Gluttony and the Prince of the aforementioned Circle of Hell frowned when feeling his emotions. "You don't need to be nervous and scared around me, Naru. I don't bite unless you piss me off." I know, Lady Beels." Naruto begins to stutter before the Queen interrupts him. "I told you before, you can call me Queen B or B for short. None of that formality shit unless for official business." "So sorry, your lady." Naruto pauses when seeing her eyes narrow. Queen B." The eyes of the Gluttony Queen widen back to normal. He knew Naruto was a sinner, given she could smell the particular odor off of him. Not to mention he outright freaked out around her on their first meeting and started apologizing in an embarrassing manner. She was fine with his circumstances and paid him no mind on the matter. Yet she couldn't help but feel his unique odor she tasted was rather funny and unique, as there was something more about him she couldn't quite place. "I don't know what's wrong. Varosuke doesn't drink this much." The Vulpine Sinner remarks as Varosuke drinking wasn't anything new, but the amount she had been drinking lately was out of the norm for her. Pondering a little, B recalled a detail. "I think I overheard her talking with some people." "About what?" Naruto questions, wondering if it might be a factor into her increase in drinking. "I'm asking about her ex and said person missing out on seeing his party flavor." The Sin of Gluttony made a face. "I think that ended up setting her off." Naruto made a similar one as the royal before him. "You're probably right. I think that's been going on at some of the events we had gone to lately." "Do you know anything about her ex?" asks Tex. "She doesn't talk about him. I respect her privacy on the subject. I only know a few bits, like he was her previous bodyguard and he really ruined her financially by maxing out her credit cards when he walked out on her. Well, not exactly walking out on her but driving off by stealing her car." Naruto rubbed his eyes a little. "I knew coming here was a mistake." He freezes in place before recalling who he was speaking in front of. I'm sorry, Queen." "It's alright," says B. "I'm not offended at all. I hear it often from some partygoers." She adds with a shrug, as her partygoers would sometimes say it was a mistake to come to her parties, usually when they feel overwhelmed by everything that goes on. The Vulpine Sinner exhales a sigh. "You know, I was honestly hoping we didn't come to the party." "Is there a reason why? The party not good enough?" or B asks, wondering if her party was underperforming in some way. "It's not that. No, the party is great. It's just today is our anniversary." Naruto begins to say sheepishly before he is interrupted. "Oh shit, you're dating?" B sounded out in surprise with Tex blinking in turn. "Impressive." "What? No, we're not." Naruto corrects as he blinked owlishly a couple of times. This got a questioning look from B and Tex. "But you said your anniversary," said the Sin's boyfriend. "Since we started working together." He clarifies. "Since I met and lived with her." A frown is present on Naruto's snout. "Though I doubt she remembers it." "Rather odd to consider such a thing." Tex comments. "I think it's sweet." B coos with a soft smile. "Hey, for all things considered, you can enjoy the party for the anniversary," she says before being cut off. "Sorry, B, but I'm on the clock. And I need to check on Varosuke." Naruto says, politely declining the Sin's offer. It was a lie. Not on him checking on the pop star, but him working. It was the only thing allowing him to focus right now instead of so many things and getting in trouble. The sinner then politely excused himself to go and find his boss. Queen Bee practically tasted the lie coming from Naruto, among several other emotions. It was quite the bit of a downer for her. He doesn't need to be so nervous around me. She says with a pout. I know that, B. Vortex gives her a reassuring smile, but you know how it is. Clearly, but I'm doing my best to have everyone feel welcome being here. B remarks with a slight pout on her face. Parties ain't for everyone. Tex points out with a small smirk on his face, finding his girlfriend's pouting face rather cute. True. She remarks in response before her pout changed to a concerned look on her face. I hope everything will work out okay. Walking through the crowd, Naruto began calling out her name. Verasika. Verasika. Where the hell are you? Rounding the corner, the sinner saw Verasika was making out with a poodle hellhound with red spectacles. He got in between them and separated the pair. Okay, back off. What's your problem? Asked a poodle hellhound in a privileged snooty tone, all before she took a look at the Vulpine sinner. Oh? You up for a three-way? If so, I have no problem with that. The poodle remarks with a sly smirk on her face. Yeah, sorry, I don't plan on catching bitchiness from you, skank. The Vulpine sinner remarks with a deadpan look as he could freaking smell the sheer bitchiness radiating from her in more ways than one. Verasika gasped like she was struck all before snarling. The fuck's your deal? Me doing my job. Naruto didn't wait for any further response as he pulled Verasika to a secluded room of Queen Bee's party palace. Him wanting to be sure she didn't pull much of a bigger spectacle with what may happen next. After all, he can already tell the tabloids will be eating this up if people took photos and recorded the pop star's actions. Verasika. What's going on? This isn't like you. He says before she interrupts him. Stupid bastard, he shouldn't have done all that shit to me. She grumbles to herself, swaying in her spot. After all that time If this is about your ex, we can. Naruto begins to say, though he is not only cut off but also shocked by what she says next. But you won't leave me, will you? Verasika sways as she gives him a hungry look. I won't, boss, but seriously. Why won't you look at me? Verasika whines out as she pouted. I am looking at you. Naruto remarks with a roll of his eyes at the current state of his boss and friend. She was totally shit-faced right now. While she was very attractive, she presently lost a whole bunch of points with her present status. Not the way I want you to. She says, hiccuping a little before pulling down the top of her dress to have her breasts almost pop out. Like looking at these. She turns and bends down to smack her nice rear. Or this. Not to mention touching him. His bland look was mixed with concern. Verasika, you're drunk. Really drunk. You need help. What you can do to help is to fuck me. Verasika slurs out drunkenly with a lewd grin on her face. I know you wanna fuck me. I've known for the longest time. Yes, I do. The Vulpine honestly admits. Not only was she the most beautiful woman he's known in his life, but his most desired. It wasn't because of her succubi allure, but of how he got to know her for all this time. He grew attracted to her over time on a genuine level, with all their time engaged in conversations in just about anything. For the longest time, however, he began to have this urge to just push her down, mount her and fuck her like no tomorrow. Breeding her and marking her as his own. But not like this, he says, as he did not want to take advantage of not just his boss, but his friend. But why? Her voice was raised, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. Her frustration and urges rising from within her. Why? Because I respect you too much. He yells back, having her step back in surprise on the outburst. You're not just my boss, but my friend. You're the first person I became friends with when I came here. You gave me a job and a roof over my head. You are literally the best thing to happen to me in my entire existence. Naruto lists off, he's hopeless, awkward and honestly desperate for love. Not to mention I'm scared. He admits after a moment. Scared? She stuttered with a slight slur to her voice. Scared that if I act on my urges, I'd ruin what we have. And it may be worse if I did them now while you're like this. Naruto says, voicing the fear of his that should they go further than their friendship and it didn't work out, it would ruin their friendship. Exhaling a breath of air, Naruto came to a decision once thinking it over. Verasika, if you go to rehab and get clean, I'll sleep with you. He says, using his last resort tactic to try and help her. Oh come on. Don't joke about that. Verasika says, rolling her eyes a bit before they shoot open in shock as he does something unexpected. She thought she was hearing things when the sounds of a belt being unbuckled and a zipper being pulled down. Looking back to the source, her eyes dramatically widen. Unholy fuck, she thinks in shock at what she is seeing. It was long and thick, and by the looks of it, it was flaccid. Not to mention the knot he has at the base was the nearly size of her fist. She soaked her thong on just seeing this. And something else was rising up from within her. Lust most certainly, but also blear. Vomit, lots and lots of thick vomit spewing out of her mouth and going everywhere. Quickly pulling up his pants, Naruto rushed to her side. "Hey, you okay?" he asks while putting a hand on her back to comfort her and holding her hair back. "I think I had too much to drink." Varousaka groans out. "Is my beep that repulsive that you?" Naruto asks with a slight grin on his face, as he felt the need to tease her a bit, given how it was due to her overdrinking again that led her to feel how she currently did. "It's not." Varousaka groans out while thinking how perfect his beep looked and imagining how it would taste and feel inside her. Sighing, Naruto knew their time here was over. "Everything okay in there?" A voice calls out from the other side of the door. Opening the door, Naruto saw Tex there with Queen Bee beside him, both wearing looks of concern. Somewhat. Naruto somewhat hoists Varousaka up a little to his side. "I'm sorry on my friend's behalf, but we're gonna have to go now." "Hey, it's cool," says the Queen of Gluttony before picking up a smell in the one room. "What happened?" "She ended up throwing up a lot." Fishing into his pocket, Naruto went to grab his wallet. "I'll pay for the cleaning." "No worries. It's not the first time some partiers upchucked my events." The sin waves of Naruto. "You can pay me back by getting her home and rested." The Vulpine Sinner did his best to bow. "Thank you, ma'am. Drive back safe, man." Tex says with a nod, wishing his friend a safe trip. "Will do, Tex." Naruto responds before he begins making his way to the parked cars with Varousaka in his arms. After a moment, Naruto located Varousaka's rather easy to spot convertible, given the hot pink look with the license plate reading "Sucks for Life." Once buckling her into the back seat of the car, he brought up the covering of the collapsible roof to cover them up. From there, he got to the driver's seat and made their way back to Lust. Looking into the rearview mirror as he drove, Naruto saw her crappy look. "Do you need to throw up again?" he asks with a raised eyebrow. "No." The drunk pop star groans out after a moment. He snorts. "Yeah, you do," he says, and sure enough he was proven right when she proceeded to vomit out the window of the car, causing him to wince, as in the side view mirror he saw said vomit hit a female imp pushing a baby carriage and all along the side of the car. "And I'll be washing that out later again," he says with a sigh, as it wasn't the first time the succubus had puked in or on the car. Back in Lust. Opening the door to their penthouse apartment, Naruto carried Varousaka inside in an awkward bridal carry. She weakly clung onto him and was whiny in a tired manner when he had to let her go on a few occasions just to get back to their place. Bedding her into her bedroom, he carefully disrobed her, cleaned her up and changed her into her pajamas. Lying her on her bed, he went to the kitchen to get some hangover pills and water to place at her nightstand. "You take so good of me," she says, all bundled up in the bedsheets. In a manner, she looked like she was in a blanket burrito. "You make me so happy." He chuckles a little. "I know I do. Love you." The tired and drunken succubus whispers out as she snuggles into the comfy bed. Her words halt him. "What?" he asks in shocking, thinking he might have misheard her. "I love you," she admits in a weak drunken state. "Love you for longest time, Naru." Recompassing from his shock, Naruto smiles slightly. He kisses her forehead after tucking her into bed one last time. "I love you too, Varousaka." He whispers softly before pecking her lips and leaving her room. For the longest time as well. If he focused back more on her, he would have seen her smile slightly, with a few tears rolling down her cheek. "He loves me," was all she thought before she finally succumbed to slumber. Days later, Pride. "This is the place," Naruto thought, looking at the flyer of a help wanted ad as he looked up at a building with black and white striped horns. He plugged down the address on his hellphone, which guided him to this particular building in Im City here in Pride. Not much was really put onto the flyer. It was a tad sketchy, literally, as it was just badly drawn with the basic forms of information. It could have been passed by for the Vulpine Sinner, but Naruto was desperate for a job right now. He didn't know any place which could hire him on quickly once he was back in Pride. He could have asked Octavia if her family was hiring, but didn't want to abuse his friendship with the Gosha on such a thing. Not to mention with her recent family problems, he didn't want to potentially add any more stress for her. Entering the horn-topped building, he saw a metal plaque placed on the wall next to a nearby elevator, which provided him with further details on the main offices residing here. 8F Roof Access. 7F Suck Incorporated. 6F IMP. 5F, literal, Loan Sharks. 4F Wackford Emporium. 3F Hellhound Monthly. 2F Sue for You. 1F HR, kidding. GF Lobby. BF Storage. Alright, let's see, Naruto muttered as he soon found his intended destination. The Vulpine Sinner was confused to a degree why the company he sought employment with was written down on a piece of notepaper taped onto the plaque instead of slide-in panels engraved like the others. Looking back to the help wanted ad, Naruto figured the business must be new and the building manager hasn't made an official slide-in panel just yet. Heading into the elevator and pressing the appropriate button, Naruto was soon ascended to the 6th floor. The ascent didn't take long, and when the elevator doors opened, allowing him to step out, he found himself in a long hallway with a grey checkered floor and dark red walls, with numerous visible cracks all over them. Scanning his surroundings, he saw 4 sets of doors. One led to a large studio space with large windows that was closed off, indicating it's unoccupied at this time. The other 2 offices on the floor were like this as well. However, the office in front of the studio had the letters IMP Headquarters scrawled on the glass in red spray paint. Opening the door, Naruto saw a relatively simple receptionist's office with some couches up against the walls and a receptionist's desk on one side of the room. Not only that, but there were a few doors that were aptly labeled badly on the glass. Break room, meeting room and the boss's office. Are they on break or out? He mused to himself, not seeing anyone in the office. However, such a question was answered when he soon picked up sounds coming from the meeting room. Taking another glance, he saw a sign hanging off of the door of meeting in progress. Approaching the door, Naruto took a breath before reaching out and… Knock knock. What? Can't you fucking read? Yelled out someone from the meeting room. A split second later, the door opened, showing a male red-skinned imp with large wide hands, a narrow head with curved black and white horns, pointed feet with boot-like heels, black lines running down his eyelids, yellow sclera with red iris eyes, a black heart-shaped skull symbol on his forehead, and white splotches covering part of the right side of his face. He was wearing a torn black collared coat with red buttons, black boots, and large black fingerless gloves with eye-like orbs that looked like they had a cross-shaped iris on them. To finish off his appearance, he's seen wearing a red skull-shaped bolo tie around his neck. The hell do you want? The imp yells out angrily. Naruto momentarily flinched on the outburst. He pulled out the help wanted ad and showed it to the imp. I'm here about the job, he says before being interrupted by the imp. You're hired. The imp yelled happily, catching the Vulpine Sinner off guard as he was suddenly pulled inside. Naruto suddenly found himself stumbling in a large conference room with grey walls, a long table and a whiteboard with a graph next to a large "fix this shit" on it. He looked around the space and there were 3 other individuals seated by the long table. 2 were a pair of imps, while the other was a hellhound. A second male imp with yellow sclera and black slit pupils. He had white pointy hair that led up to his curvy-shaped black and white horns, with a long red tail that ended in a sharp arrow, waving angrily behind him. White splotches were on his face, resembling freckles. He had a navy black coat with a red button, white cuffs, white shirt that ends with a black turtleneck, fingerless gloves and a large red bow tie. The female imp had yellow sclera and small black slit pupils. Her short grayish-black hair had a bang poofing upward, having it cover one of her black and thinly white striped horns. She had a long tail with an arrow tip slightly waving behind her. She had small white markings on her arms and near the tip of her tail. She had a beauty mark on her left cheek, and when she smiled at him, there was a small gap in her teeth. She wore a simple black choker, a cold shoulder black crop top with gold buttons where the straps at the top meet the torso piece, black pants, fingerless black gloves and black footwear. And when she waved at him, there was a black heart-shaped tattoo on her shoulder. Hi. Naruto says meekly as he suddenly finds himself seated at the table. What just happened? He asks in confusion, having no idea what just happened in the span of seconds. Welcome to the fuck show, said the hellhound beside Naruto, who sounded very bored and sarcastic in her tone, while focusing far more on her phone than anyone else. Glad to have you on board, she remarks with a roll of her eyes and not taking them off her phone. She is a wolf-like hellhound with the typical traits of red sclera with wider eyes for her eyes. Her fur is white and grey encircling her face, grey patches on her shoulders, and long, voluminous silver hair swept to the side to reveal her dark grey ears, the left of which is pierced with 2 small, black hoop earrings, while the right is ragged. And there was also a piercing on her right eyebrow with a black hoop for jewelry. She has a large dark grey bushy tail with white on the underside. Her outfit features a large, spiked black choker around her neck. Her tattered grey, off-the-shoulder crop top is held up at the neckline by a series of crisscross spaghetti straps that form an inverted pentagram. She wears black shorts that are tattered at the hems, with a white crescent moon detail on the right side. The accessories she has on her include black fingerless gloves and thigh-high black toeless stockings, with her black claws protruding due to her digitigrade stance. Sir, what's going? The second male imp begins to ask before he is interrupted. Not now, Moxie, I have a few things to say, says the first imp as he paced in front of the whiteboard with his tail waving behind him. Alright, now I know business has been a bit slow lately, yes. It's no one's fault, okay? I'm not naming any names here, cough Moxie cough. The aforementioned imp, apparently named Moxie, gave out a confused and accusing look at his boss. What about a car wash? the female imp suggested, who spoke with a southern accent. Though from what Naruto figured, he would have guessed she was from Wrath, as that's where most imps with southern accents originated from, according to Verosika. "This is hell, Millie. No one cares about cars being cleaned here, okay?" says the boss imp. "They somewhat do," Naruto begins to say. "It's a waste of time and money." The one imp interrupts Naruto as he ponders for a moment. "Oh, what about a billboard?" "We can't afford a billboard, sir," Moxie says, rolling his eyes. "Helpful, Moxie." The taller imp suddenly appears by the smaller one and hugs his side. "Really glad you're in the room right now." The taller imp pushes him off his seat. "See, unlike you, I did something progressive and hired a new guy. Say hello to whatever his name is." The three imps focus more towards the Vulpine Sinner, who looked a bit confused momentarily before compassing himself. Hi. Name's Naruto Uzumaki. Wait." The new arrival looked towards the taller imp. "If you guys are broke, then why hire me?" He holds up the help wanted flyer. "Why even bother putting these up in the first place?" "We still have those up," Moxie says, shocking the Vulpine Sinner. "I thought they'd be thrashed by now." He adds, as most flyers, posters, or really anything usually got destroyed in a day or two in Imp City. "How long ago were they?" Naruto begins to ask. "Alright, back to business." The taller imp fishes out a VCR tape and heads over to a small TV monitor. "Have you guys forgotten what service we provide?" he says, inserting the tape and soon hitting play. The TV then shows a video of the three imps killing, shooting, decapitating humans, with the hellhound occasionally mauling an unsuspecting victim. "Ah, those were the good times," says the taller imp, who was eating from a bowl of popcorn. "Wait, I'm confused," mutters Naruto as he was practically watching an amateur slasher movie. "What kind of service is this?" "I'm glad you asked, Nito," the taller imp says with a wide grin on his face. "Naruto," the Vulpine Sinner corrected him. "Menma, whatever. We are a professional murder company that was founded by yours truly. The name's Blitz, the O is silent, make sure to remember that, new guy. Especially when I make all the important business decisions," the taller imp says, introducing himself to the Vulpine Sinner. "I pretty much will," Naruto remarks with a deadpan stare, as internally he was thinking that it might have been a mistake to show up here now. Though why did the name Blitz with a silent O sound familiar to him? "What important business decisions?" Moxie asks suddenly with a raised eyebrow. "Shut up, Moxie, I'm training the new guy," snaps Blitzo with an annoyed look on his face. "What training? You haven't even told us why you suddenly hired him." Moxie snaps back at his boss's immaturity. "I second that," Naruto adds in. "I didn't have an interview," and he says before sighing as he is once more interrupted. "Easy, you're gonna be the distraction in case anything goes wrong, if you know what I mean," Blitzo says happily, munching more of his popcorn. "I'm a meat shield?" Naruto asks, rather annoyed. Sure, that was basically what he did in his one bodyguard job. But this guy outright hired him for that. "Exactly," Blitzo says with a wide grin and excited look on his face. "Wow, you're such a beep," Naruto remarks with a deadpan look, as his new boss definitely seemed like a beep to say the least. "Tell me about it," the hellhound mutters aloud, still focused on her phone. "I should point out that I don't need reminding about what we do here, sir, considering you blew most of our salaries on an obnoxious TV ad last week," Moxie angrily says. "One that you then additionally paid to have run for a full 3 hours on a channel nobody watches." He rants at the foolishness of his boss, yet again putting the company at financial risk. Hey, excuse me." Blitzo puts the bowl of popcorn aside to focus more on Moxie. "What's obnoxious about a super fun jingle, alright? It's a fun distraction when an advertisement spittin' bullshit," the tall imp says proudly. "People love musicals, sir," says Millie with a wide grin on her face, as she herself did enjoy musicals. "Exactly, Millie. And we're basically doing a musical." Blitzo suddenly looks over to Moxie. "Are you gonna crush my musical theater dreams like my dad did?" Drones out the confused Vulpine Sinner. "When did things head in this odd direction?" Sir Moxie begins to say before he interrupted by Blitzo. "Pause right now, all I see is just my dad's asshole talking to me. Crushing my dreams of being who I truly am inside," Blitzo overly dramatically says. "Are you trying to crush his dreams, Moxie?" Millie asks in a slight tone with an impish grin on her face. Moxie looks over to Millie. "What? I thought I knew you," Millie seductively says with her tail curving upwards. Naruto looked at the interaction between the two, noticing a connection between them. Oddly enough, he could feel the genuine love and lust between them. "Are you two?" he begins to ask before trailing off. "We're married," Moxie says while Millie hugs her husband. Naruto gives them a smile. "That's really nice. You don't see that quite often," he remarks, politely complimenting the two. "Being what?" Moxie questions with a raised eyebrow, not getting what the Vulpine was talking about. The genuine love of what you have with each other. Naruto says with a smile. Hearing this got Millie to giggle while Moxie smiles bashfully. Gotta ask, but how the sinner begins to say. Yeah, love and bullshit. Blitzo interrupts the wholesome moment, much to Naruto and Moxie's annoyance. I can't believe you, Moxie, after I made you employee of the month. Looking over, they saw Blitzo holding up a plaque with a very uncomfortable picture of Moxie on it. When did you take that? Asks Naruto. When he was in the John and taking a huge shit. Blitzo says with a proud smile. Do you know the word privacy? Naruto asks in disbelief after a moment as his was shocked by the brazenness of the imp. He doesn't. Moxie says rather annoyingly. And sir, I'm sorry, but a commercial jingle is not comparable to musical theater. Nobody actually likes the jingles. He rants out. I liked it. Moxie turns his head towards his wife, who gave the genuine comment. Do not agree with him in front of me. He pleads while shakily pointing at her. What jingle? Naruto asked as the thing had been mentioned several times so far, but he had yet to actually know what it actually was. Glad you asked, Minato. Blitzo says with a wide happy grin. It's Naruto. Naruto replies with a tired sigh as he was starting to get the feeling Blitzo getting his name was intentional. With that, Blitzo ignores the correction, switches out another tape and has it play. Hi, there. I'm Blitzo. The O is silent, and I'm the founder of IMP. Are you a piece of shit that got yourself sent to hell, or are you an innocent soul who got fucked over by someone else? There was a buff sinner wearing an Ohio sports jersey, while Blitzo was in the background holding up a cardboard sign that read some guy who hired us. After lovingly killing my wife for fucking a deliveryman, you can imagine my surprise when I wound up here after the state of Ohio killed me. I really wish I could stick it to that yappy jogger who saw me hiding the body. The footage then cuts to Blitzo holding a particular grimoire while Moxie and Millie were performing a ritual in the background. Well, luckily for you, thanks to our company's special access to the living world, we can help you take care of your unfinished business by taking out anyone who screwed you over, said Blitzo as a portal magically appears before he falls into it backwards, when you were alive. What followed was a series of clips of the three imps killing people in the human world after the company logo was displayed following a certain jingle. When you want somebody gone and you don't want to wait too long. Call the immediate murder professionals. Hand grenade or cyanide. We'll make it look like suicide. The immediate murder professionals. We do our job so well. Because we come straight up from hell. We'll kill your husband or your wife. We leave and let you keep the knife. We're the immediate murder profession. Blam. Things took an odd turn in the commercial when Moxie ended up shooting a kid passing by instead of some woman more focused on her phone than anything. In a human world hospital. Two nurses quickly rush into the operating room with a small boy in an orange shirt and black pants on a gurney. The doctor rushes over to a station to prep some equipment while the nurses tried to look over the boy that was shot. Doctor, he's not responding. Said a curvy feminine nurse with bright pink hair but spoke in a deep masculine voice. Blue water, stat. Ordered a male blue-haired nurse as the woman nurse hit the injured boy with a clear IV bag filled with blue liquid. It didn't do anything. Damn it. I'm not losing another one. Said the doctor, handing both nurses a pair of defibrillators as all three pressed them against the small child. Clear. Ordered the doctor, successfully reviving the child as he took in a deep breath. Holy shit, it actually worked. Blitzo, Millie, and Moxie are waiting outside the boys' hospital room waiting for some kind of news. Blitzo was reading a magazine while Millie comforts Moxie, who looked devastated for missing his supposed target and shooting a child. The doctor soon comes out of the room with a clipboard flipping through pages, not really caring about the strange appearance of the imps. He appears to be in stable condition, but he'll need surgery. Now what insurance provider do you freaks have? The fuck is insurance? Asked a confused Blitz. Crash. The three imps were suddenly thrown out the window of the hospital as they held on with the unconscious boy strapped in until they were stopped by a rope that became tangled around Blitzo's foot for a few seconds, then snaps, plummeting all of them to the ground. Kids die for free. With the recorded commercial over, there was quite the number of thoughts about it the one sinner in the room had in mind. One of which. How the hell did you guys film all that? Naruto asks. More specifically the bit at the hospital. You don't want to know. Moxie groans out. I actually do. Naruto asks with a deadpan look as that honestly seemed like a rather large detail that should be explained instead of just being swept under the rug. Let's just say I know a guy. Blitzo states, confusing the Vulpine sinner even more. I'd like to go on record and say that incident was Luna's fault. Moxie says. Who? Naruto asks. Me. Says the hellhound beside Naruto, still not looking up from her phone. You were supposed to give us the right info on the target. It's very simple. Moxie points out in irritation and a bit of a snooty tone. Luna scoffs, sounding very uninterested. Sit on a beep, Moxie. You sit on A and do your job. Moxie sputters with a bit of a blush before snapping at the hellhound. Nice comeback, Moxie. Naruto drawled out. I'm working on it. The little imp grumbles out. Hey, now we don't blame our screw-ups on Luna, okay? Blitzo comes up to her and affectionately rubs his cheek against her fur, causing the hellhound to growl at him menacingly to make him stop. She didn't do anything wrong. Are you kidding me, sir? She's awful. Moxie asks in disbelief. How? Naruto couldn't help but ask. Well. Few flashback sequences. From the receptionist desk, Luna was reading a copy of Hellhound Monthly when the desk phone rang out in a puppy bark ringtone. She absent-mindedly picks it up and answers. Hello, IMP. Luna, I got stabbed. Call Mox. Clang. Luna hangs up after hearing Millie's voice, not really caring what was happening. Another instance has Blitzo walking up to Luna, holding a small gift box out to her. Happy adoption anniversary, Looney. I got you a little something. Is it a cure for syphilis? Asked Luna in a bored tone. This got Blitzo to stammer, not really knowing how to answer that. Getting the one answer, Luna acts promptly. Then I don't want it. By grabbing the offered gift and slamming it down hard to the floor. In turn, this caused a large horde of spiders bursting out from the box and covering her whole body. The fuck is this? She yells in rage. I'm sorry, I thought you loved spiders. Says Blitzo, who was apparently now standing outside the window ledge. God damn it, muttered Luna while a spider was hanging from her snout. Later at the break room, Luna was watching some videos on her phone when Moxie entered the room looking at a piece of paper in his hand with a confused look on his face. Excuse me, did you just fax me an ad for weight loss? Asked Moxie holding up the flyer that read Chub be gone. No, said Luna in a bored tone. Well, why would anyone send me this? Asked a confused Moxie. Come on, Luna looks up from her phone, you know why. It was after Moxie left did Luna begin rummaging through the fridge looking for something to eat. Whoever left the fucking avocado salad in the fridge, I'm taking it because I have the worst hangover right now. Says the hellhound, holding a small red container before discarding the lid and guzzles the entire avocado salad all in one go. Why would you drink on a work night? Asked a confused Millie. I'm hungover from this morning, Dumbus. Came Luna's retort just as Moxie re-entered the break room and noticed what was in her hand. Isn't that my lunch? The imp asked seeing the dish in her hand. You know what? I can't take this assault right now. I need to blow off some fucking steam. Luna kicked the box to Moxie, instantly knocking him out of the room. From there, she ran out of the building, went across the street and passed by a tall demon lady who was pushing a baby stroller. The moment they made contact, Luna kicked it high into the air and stormed off, leaving the one mother shocked in disbelief. It was only later on in the day when she came back to work when the receptionist phone went off. After hearing who it was. Blitz, that clingy rich asshole is on the phone. Says it's urgent and wants to talk to you, called out Luna in a bored tone to her adoptive father. Sounds a little DTFY. From the water cooler, Blitzo throws the disposable cup down in frustration. Oh god, it was one time. If I hadn't slept with that privileged asshole, none of us would have access to the living world. Beside him was Moxie, who was soaked from the spilled water and was looking at his boss in disbelief. Be what? View a flashback within a flashback FLASHCEPTION. Over in what's essentially the district in the Circle of Pride designated for those of the Ars Gotia, Blitzo was sneaking out of the bedroom of the noble owl demon he fucked last night at some rich fucks get-together event. He was partially nude and was fumbling to get the rest of his clothes on while sneaking out with the noble's grimoire. Got the book. Got this fucking heavy book. Sang Blitzo to himself in a hushed tone. He stepped over the balcony of a large mansion and laid the grimoire over the ledge. When he tried to step over, he lost his balance and fell down below. Oh shit. Blitzo made a harsh landing on a table. Silverware and porcelain cups and plates scattered everywhere as a result. He looked up and saw the shocked faces of several avian demons, one of which he recognized as the noble owl demon's wife. As it turned out, he just interrupted their early morning tea party. Sorry, I fucked your husband. Was all Blitzo says as he quickly grabs the grimoire and skedaddles as the woman of the manor and screeches at her husband, who just came out to the balcony soon after. Then Blitzo's flashback. Blitz. Yelled Luna. I heard you, Aurea. Inside of Blitzo's office. So, what can I do for you this time, Stolas? Asked Blitzo, who was absent-mindedly playing with a bobblehead of Moxie. There's a political candidate causing trouble up on Earth for a few of my associates. He's trying to convince people global warming exists. Says Prince Stolas of the Ars Gotia over the phone. The owl demon Blitzo fucked in acquiring the grimoire to get to the human world. Doesn't it? Asked a confused Blitzo. Well, yes, but more people die if nothing is done about it. And it gets lonely here. said Stolas in a small whiny tone. Okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. Commented an uninterested Blitzo. You know what happens when I'm lonely, Blitzy? Asked Stolas in a flirty tone. Oh, god fucking damn it, groaned out Blitzo with a cringed look, pulling the phone away from him. When I'm lonely, I become hungry, and when I become hungry, I want to choke on that rat of yours. And lick all of your before taking out your with more teeth until you're screaming like a fucking baby. Blitzo was visibly disturbed as Stolas kept going on about his sexual endeavors with him, prompting him to finally hang up. He breaks his hell phone in half, smashes it with his desk phone, pulls out a blender, puts the pieces in it until it is pureed into a liquid. He turns and hands the blender to Luna, who was oddly standing nearby. Eat this? And then you know that bridge over the freeway? Asked Blitzo as Luna chugged the blender contents with ease. Yeah? She responds, one swallowing the hellphone drink. Shit off it. Back to the present. Naruto's eyes twitch after processing everything he heard. Not just of Moxie's rants on Luna, but of one particular detail with how Blitzo, Moxie and Millie are able to go into the human world. Well, now I know who to thank for Octavia's issue at her place. Thought Naruto, glancing and narrowing his eyes at Blitzo. Because of him, her parents are going through a divorce. In actuality, it was a long time coming from what his friend told him, but it was difficult for her to process. Back to the matter at hand, Naruto felt an odd chill down his spine when processing the explicit details of what Blitzo had to undergo with the Gosha Prince, as it was outright disturbing. He stammers honestly, having trouble figuring what to say in response to what he had just learned. I'd rather not think too much about it. Moxie pinches the bridge of his nose. The thoughts alone are too much for me. He says as the imp could already feel a headache forming just from remembering some of the antics of their boss. Really? Asks Millie. Cause some of that was really hot and gives me ideas on what to do at home. She says with a purr and seductive look on her face as she strokes Moxie's chin, causing him to blush and gulp. This got Naruto to shiver in disturbance, as the things Moxie described having overheard Stolas say to Blitzo on that call were depraved on an unheard of level. Look, the point is Luna's a valued member of our family, and you don't get rid of family. Blitzo states in finality. When hearing Blitzo say this, Luna actually looks up from her phone with a barely noticeable smile on her snout, feeling touched by his words. At that moment, she finally notices the newcomer. She stiffens upon inspecting him and mutters woof under her breath. He caught her eye and voiced a brief hello. With a small smile. Hi. She said meekly as a blush was slowly forming on her face. To her, he was very attractive. Finally focusing on him, there seemed to be this feeling coming off from him that drew her in. She could describe it as warm and inviting. Despite hearing what he got on Luna on Moxie's recounts, Naruto decided to give the Hellhound a chance. He flashes her another small smile in turn in order to be courteous. Hi, I'm Naruto. He says, formally introducing himself to the Hellhound. Luna. The female Hellhound stutters out a bit due to how nervous she was and internally curses herself for stammering. Did I do my makeup shitty today? Fuck. We aren't a family, sir. Moxie blurts out, unintentionally ruining whatever interaction going on between Naruto and Luna. You're the boss. We are the employees. You treat her like she's some troubled teenager. She's more like a meth-addicted homeless woman you let man the phones. The imp rages, pointing a finger at the Hellhound and directing her attention towards him. Luna glared at Moxie, flipping him on, ruining her moment with the newcomer. Hearing this rant, Naruto wore a small frown. Isn't that going a bit too far, Moxie? He asks as surely that was an exaggeration. Blitzo balks on what he heard. Moxie, I can't believe you. That is offensive. Naruto exhales a sigh of relief at hearing this, as it seemed like his new boss had at least one positive point. Without homeless people, I wouldn't have half the joy and laughter I do in this life. Only for said point to be utterly shattered as Naruto wore a WTF expression on his face from what he just heard. While we're on the subject of family, can you stop finding me and Millie outside of work? Moxie asks in a tired tone. Wait, what? Naruto asks aloud in confusion. Come on, sweetie, it's not that big a deal. Millie sweetly says to her husband. This has Moxie snap in an infuriated manner. Excuse me, what? Flashback. Millie and Moxie were in their apartment with Moxie preparing their meals as Millie watched her husband with a smile. Honey, can you get me the butter? Asked Moxie, cutting up some vegetables. Sure, sweetie. Millie opened their fridge when she was suddenly surprised when a hand popped out handing her the butter. Spoiler alert. The butter's spoiled. Said Blitzo from inside the fridge, making Millie giggle at his comment. What's funny, honey? Asked Moxie, hearing his wife giggle. Really impressive wordplay. Blitzo states with a grin from the fridge. Moxie rounds over to the fridge, seeing Blitzo situated inside of it. What the why are you in our fridge? He yells out in anger at the sight. Later that evening, Moxie and Millie are asleep in bed while Moxie was tossing and turning as he heard a loud purring sound that was disturbing his sleep. Moxie opened his eyes to see Blitzo standing on him, staring him right in the eyes. "Whatcha dreamin' about?" asked Blitzo, waving his tail happily while looking down at Moxie. "I was dreaming about my father being murdered. But now, I'd like to go back to that," Moxie says in a tired, deadpan voice, wanting his boss to leave their apartment already. In another evening, Moxie was having a romantic time with his wife as they were singing a song inspired by their love. And in Moxie's possession was a guitar he was strumming along to a beat. Oh, what a thrill. When the crimson starts to spill. And my Millie goes in for the kill. She takes away my breath. She's the angel of death for me. Oh Millie. She's my queen. It's like a dream. When I hear her victims start to scream. In and out of the sack. She's the maniac for me. Oh Millie. When the blood starts dripping down the walls. Drip, drip, drip. Millie sings in joyfully. And the bodies start to fall, Moxie resumes with a smile. Thud. His wife adds in with glee. My heart skips a beat. When my Millie's guns are blazing in the heat. Bang, bang, bang. She playfully sings. My assassin love. She makes the murdering fun for me. Oh, la-da-dee. The pair then sing the last line of the song together. Of all the imps in hell. It's for her him that I fell. Oh Millie. The married couple closed their eyes wanting to share a passionate kiss when Moxie noticed something in the corner of his eye after hearing a faint ping in the air. Are you fucking filming us right now? Yelled Moxie, seeing Blitzo outside their window holding up a camcorder to record them. Then flashback. Just stop doing that, growled Moxie with his eye badly twitching. Wow, Naruto comments, not really knowing what to say anymore. And that's just the tame stuff. Moxie adds in. I repeat my earlier question, Blitzo, Naruto begins to say. It's Blitz. Blitzo interrupts with an annoyed look on his face at his name being said incorrectly. Do you know the word privacy? The sinner asks, ignoring the imp's correction. I don't see what the issue is. Is there something you don't want me seeing? Blitzo ignores Naruto's inquiry while focusing more on Moxie, who is getting more angry now. No. Moxie yells out in outrage. You a baby whiner haver. Blitzo asks with a cheeky grin as he holds up his pinky finger and wiggles it around, getting a snicker from Luna. Sir. What you say and how you act is totally inappropriate. Moxie yells out in absolute fury at the gall and embarrassing question. Calm down, Mox. You're gonna have another panic attack. Millie places her hand on her husband's shoulder, trying her best to calm him down. I am calm. He snaps, whimpering soon after while glaring at Blitzo. His wife brings his head to her loving bosom, caressing his head as a means of comforting him. There. It's okay. She says, trying to soothe him. Look, I don't judge the boring couple stuff you do outside work hours, Blitzo motions his hand suggesting sexual gestures, so don't judge me. Oh, I do judge you, sir. Moxie pries away from Millie. Quite a lot actually. Mox, he's our boss. Millie protests at her husband's insult of their boss. Who should at least respect his employee's life. Says Naruto, coming up to Moxie's aid. It's quite alright, Mills. Your husband is just, how do I say this without being offensive, oh right, retarded. Blitzo says with a devious smile. That is offensive. Naruto remarks with a deadpan look of disbelief on his face. No one asked you, Rolo. Blitzo counters with a roll of his eyes. Naruto, and that didn't even have enough syllables. Naruto states with a sigh as honestly he was starting to think maybe he should stop correcting Blitzo on his name. Does immaturely insulting me make you feel better about your sad, single life? Moxie angrily counters. It actually does. Blitzo states with a shrug. That's rather sad. Naruto attempts to get out of his seat. You know, I think I'll. Oh no you don't, big boy. You ain't getting out that easily. Blitzo says, interrupting Naruto as he gets up to leave. Really? How? The Vulpine Sinner fully gets up and swiftly hovers above Blitzo. Before the tall imp could do anything, he was hoisted into the air by the scruff of his neck before pressing him against the wall. And the sinner's grip was a vice, having it hard to pry himself free. Cuz how I see it, you don't have the muscle to get out of this, indicating you can't do shit and not making me leave. He says with a low growl in his voice. Blitzo makes some choking sounds as he struggles to breathe. But the married couple, Millie, looks on with concern. Should we? Not yet. Moxie says briefly. Just a little longer. He adds while watching the scene in interest. Call it petty or vindictive, but he was rather enjoying seeing Blitzo manhandled after all the shit he puts the married couple through, and he really needed to get some pleasure out of seeing this. Luna, meanwhile, squirmed a little in her seat on what she just witnessed. Fuck, that's hot. She thought with a blush, tail wagging a bit faster at the rather dominating display. Blitzo gasps out through Naruto's grip on his throat. What was that? Naruto asks in response, lessening his grip a bit so the imp could speak clearly. Blitzo gasps out with a slight blush on his red cheeks and glazed look in his eyes. Naruto drops the imp immediately at this and looks at him in repulsion. Did you just get a hard-on from that? He asks in disgust at seeing a noticeable tent the imp's pants. Maybe. Blitzo remarks with a slight grin and shift of his eyes. Why did you say that like a question? Naruto asks in disgust. Blitzo coughs a little, regaining some air. Okay, not gonna be a meat shield, but more of some muscle on the field. Really? Naruto asks with a raised eye, as that was much better than being a freaking meat shield of all things. Oh yeah. Though I'd also ask how good you are in bed. Blitzo says with a wide impish grin. Naruto recoils before quickly hiding behind Luna like a frightened fox. Sir. He's brand new and you just hired him. Least you can do is wait or hold off on such questions like you did with Millie and I. Says Moxie, defending Naruto only in part due to somewhat paying him back for the sight of seeing Blitzo manhandled a bit. What? You think this is a good enough time to ask? Blitzo asks rhetorically. Even Stola's wife reacted faster than that when we first met. And the only reason you have a wife is because you're easy to manage, unlike some other guys here. Says Luna, who was stroking Naruto's head, who was calming down to her touch. At least the new guy is easier to work with. Now just hold on, Naruto says, but stops when Luna hits a particular spot on his head, making him feel loopy and melt to her touch while letting out an audible purr. Case in point. Luna remarks with a bit of a smirk as she continues to scratch that specific spot on Naruto's head. My husband is not easy to manage, you bitch. Millie stresses out while flipping the hellhound off with both hands. In response, Luna growls back at the female imp and thus ceases her scratching of Naruto's head. Do not talk to my receptionist that way. She's sensitive. Blitzo says, defending his adopted daughter. Yes, I am. Luna calls out with her teeth bared at the female imp. And you. Blitzo pries Naruto away from Luna's hands. Keep away from my loony. Humming out of the bit of pleasure he received, Naruto barely registered the tall imp's words. Why? As I see you're trying to seduce her. Trying to get into her pants. Blitzo snaps with a heated glare at the Vulpine male. Hey. Luna snaps her jaw at Blitzo, pulling Naruto away from the imp. Stay out of my sex life. And you don't get to decide who I get to be with. She yells in embarrassment. The taller imp was always doing this sort of thing, and it's why she had never had a boyfriend or girlfriend, had like zero friends in general, and was barely able to satiate her own needs due to how nosy and or clingy he was, not to mention him constantly stealing any and all of her toys for his own use. Needless to say, after he used them, using them herself was the last thing she would ever do. Luna, I forbid, Blitzo begins to say before a new voice is heard and interrupts him. You guys are all fucking assholes. At that moment, Naruto finally realized there was another person in the conference room. Looking to the back, he and the others saw the one kid Moxie shot in the commercial attached to several pieces of hospital equipment. Wait, you're alive? Naruto asks, shocked to see a live human in hell, something that was also most likely very against the laws of hell. Oh, shut up, kid. You're lucky to witness this. Blitzo says dismissively. How long has he been alive and down here? Naruto asks, as it was insane for a living human to be down in hell, let alone for an extended period of time. Since the commercial. Blitzo states with an uncaring shrug of his shoulders. And how long ago was that? Naruto asks with a deadpan look. This company is such a mess. Moxie groans out. Alright, let's go back to talking about my outfit. Blitzo says suddenly, confusing everyone else except for Luna. Nobody was talking about that. Says the hellhound. Which is why I'm trying to get that bowl rolling. Blitzo eagerly responds with. So, how does it look? It's good, right? Before any desired response was given, the human boy interrupts him. I've been in literal hell having to pretend to be paralyzed so you fuckshits wouldn't kill me. He pried off the equipment, hooking him up to the initial machines, showing he was relatively fine. But now, I want that. I want death. The kid says in a desperate manner. You were faking this whole time? Naruto asks. The kid never answers him, only going into a rant, starting with Blitzo. You're a selfish, greedy clown, and I'm a kid. We're supposed to like clowns, even the creepy ones. Hey now, that's not very, Moxie begins to say in his boss's defense. Annoying, privacy invading, and inappropriate as he may be, the imp was still his boss. If I wanted to hear from a spineless jackass, I'd rip out your spine and ask you some shit. The kid interrupts Moxie, making the small imp flinch. That's my husband you're talking to. Millie growls out. All that got was the kid laughing. That's your husband? I figured you for a slut, but I didn't know you needed beat that bad. That's enough, you little shit. Naruto yells out. You don't talk to someone like that. Especially to a lady. This coming from some tough guy who suddenly got weak at the knees with a lady's touch. The kid mockingly says. Watch it, brat. You're really crossing the line. Naruto growls out, quickly losing his patience with the brat. Oh, I'm so scared. The kid then rounds to Luna. And you? What? What about me? Luna growls in annoyed confusion. She can be fine with the kid insulting Fatty and his wife. Even her adoptive dad to some extent. The new guy, however, was something else. Nothing, I don't talk to dogs. The kid crosses his arms. I'm a cat person. Wow, Blitzo mutters out. You know, kid, you kind of are a piece of shit. This got nods from the others in the room. More so from Naruto, who was really wanting to pummel the kid, standards be damned. A certain ringtone like a guitar riff goes off from Luna's phone, having her check the received message. Oh, fuck. Guys, I just got a text from our client. Luna bore a sinister smile on her snout. Guess he was the right target after all. She says. Who? Millie asks with a raised eyebrow. Him. Luna says with a fanged grin as she all turned to see her pointing at the kid, who was looking both confused and surprised. Me? He asks in shock and slight fear with a gulp. Yup. She flashes her teeth in turn. The brat? Naruto asks. Luna shows Naruto her hellphone with a one-message thread to show the confirmation instead of the kid's mother. Oh yeah, definitely. Naruto states as sure enough that's what it said on her phone. They wanted us to kill an actual child. Blitzo says out of utter surprise. That's what they're saying. Luna says with a grin. Well, Christ on a stick, I guess there is a god. Blitzo says happily, swiftly whipping out a flintlock pistol and fires a bullet into the kid's heart, instantly killing him. Gotta wonder what the kid did to deserve a hit. Naruto asks, as it must have been something pretty major. Probably being a piece of shit, like what we just saw. Moxie spits out as he and his fellow imps head over to the dead body and begin beating it up, venting their frustrations. This was all before Millie pulls out a knife and stabs it repeatedly. I'd find this disturbing if I wasn't so used to it by now. The Vupline Sinner states with a sigh, as it was a fact. His time in hell had honestly left him pretty desensitized to death, violence, and carnage for the most part, especially after seeing the aftermath of the purge. How come? Luna asks Naruto while she was recording the death on her phone, given the client's request. Long story. Was the vague response. And do you guys have to really desecrate the kid like that? Yes. Chorus the imps. Naruto pinches the bridge of his nose. What did I get myself into? He asks himself. Should have left earlier. Now you're stuck with us. Luna says with a slight grin. Maybe Naruto ponders out loud, thinking that maybe he still had time to back out of the job. Yeah, it would mean trying to find a new job elsewhere, but that might be for the best if this was the kind of shit he would be dealing with on a daily basis. Would be a shame if you left. Naruto looked over and saw Luna give him a puppy dog pout. It's not gonna. Naruto stammers out at the sight of the dreaded look. Luna merely turned up the pout, making her eyes oddly bigger, water and glisten, making Naruto's heart clench on the adorableness. Alright, fine. Put that away. He remarks, relenting to the power that was the puppy dog pout. Veronica had one of her own, but the hellhounds was far more dangerous. But that remark, Naruto was fully initiated into the dysfunctional group. Unsurprisingly, his first task was being taught on his first day on how to dispose of a body. Call it rather excessive when they were dismembering the corpse and putting it into a big black garbage bag. During the whole time, it made Naruto very uneasy about what was being done. After that, Naruto had to learn more on various means of cleaning up a crime scene, far more than what he learned beforehand. You know, folks, with this company, I really wanted to prove that we're capable of doing the same things anyone else can. Like killing people. So, from us here at the Immediate Murder Professionals Group, we promise to settle your unfinished business or your money is gone and you're never getting it back, and you can write us a bad review, but we'll play dumb to it because it's hell and no one fucking cares. All this was being recorded by Luna, given Blitzo wanted to have this added into the next take of their commercial if they ever get around to it. You know, even though this kid was a target, he's still a child. Blitzo awkwardly brings his employees into a large hug and wrapping his tail around them. And it's important that we handle this going forward respectfully. He says, getting a smile out of them when hearing this comment. In the human world. The male news reporter holds a microphone up to a woman crying uncontrollably, holding up a badly drawn picture of her son, while the reporter looked bored and disinterested. The headline on the screen says, "Hot mom sucks at drawing own kid. Please. If anyone has seen my little Eddie, please contact us." At the distraught woman pleads before she was soon interrupted when a large black bag dropped from the sky holding her son's dismembered body. The humans look up to see a portal containing the three imps and their newest member looking down at them. "You're welcome," said Blitzo as he waved back at them and closed the portal. All this did was traumatize the mother even more. Back in hell. Why didn't you have the body sold to the cannibal district? Naruto asks, causing Blitzo to freeze in his spot. They'd probably pay well for such meat. He adds in, making him gag a little more in turn. After some moments of thinking it over, Blitzo slaps his face. Why didn't I think of that before? Bellows the taller imp. "'Cause you're an idiot." Luna adds in for her enjoyment. Scene cut. Glancing at the light pinkish sky above, Naruto lets out a puff of air as he is walking down Sloth Streets. "Thanks again for getting me a day pass, Octavia," he says, holding his hellphone to his ear. "It's no problem, Naruto. You're just lucky I convinced my dad to get you one," Octavia says, waving off his thanks. "I wish I could return the favor." The Vulpine remarks as it didn't feel right to him not to repay her for such a big favor. Naruto could practically imagine her wearing a cheeky grin with what she says next. "I'll be sure to keep up a tab for you. If you wanna hang out later, hit me up. I know you're not exactly thrilled with what's happening at your place," he says as after hearing how Blitzo got the book, Naruto felt like Octavia could use a distraction from her parents. He can hear her exhale a tired sigh from her end. "I'll take that into consideration." Since the day of Octavia harshly waking up to the sounds of her parents fighting, Naruto was basically her confidant. He was sadly her only friend who treated her normally, instead of what many of the snobby people at her private school do. He was practically the first person she called to vent her frustration on the matter, as she didn't know who else to turn to. "Anyways, have fun in Sloth," she adds with a bit of a cheeky tone, knowing what he was doing there. "I'll try," he says before hearing the line go dead, indicating Octavia ended the call. There was essentially a reason for why he was here in the first place. He grew tired of calling the rehab center and having to wait in order to talk to Verosika. So he came to a decision to come see her in person. Clearly such a thing will surprise her to no end. Finally arriving at the address the posse gave him, Naruto walked inside the large building. "Hello, is there anything I can help you with today?" asks the purple-skinned Baphomet receptionist with a lit candle on her head and a very unique mouth that resembles a certain female anatomy part. "Yes. Naruto Uzumaki. I'm here to see a friend of mine. Verosika Mayday," Naruto states, introducing himself and explaining the reason behind why he was there. "I'm sure we don't have such an individual here, sir." The receptionist replies with a dry look on her face, thinking he was yet another crazed fan trying to see the pop star. "I understand you're keeping your clientele under wraps for public safety. But can you at least tell her I'm here to visit her?" Naruto asks, understanding the reason as to why she was playing dumb. "I'll have to verify it with her before bringing her into the visitor area," the receptionist replies after a moment. "No worries," he said, seeing the receptionist leave her post. Waiting in the seating area, Naruto scrolled through his phone to check on a litany of social media alerts. He typically saw some articles of Verosika being in rehab, which led to many speculations as to why. Some were accurate on how bad her drinking was with the source photos at Queen Bee's party. Others were rather odd, given she was using some of Belphegor's high-profit drugs and went up badly, but Naruto knew better as the pop star never took drugs ever in her life. And from there the other rumors were outright stupid and far out there. There were even a few claiming that the whole rehab thing was actually a cover and she was in fact hiding a secret pregnancy. Needless to say, Naruto just ignored all of these completely. "Mr. Uzumaki," the Vulpine Sinner looked up to see the receptionist returned, "if you'll follow me." He got up from his seat and followed after the Baphomet demon to a different part of the rehab center. By the looks of it, it was a visitor sector like what he recalled seeing in some prison shows back in the human world. "Naruto." The Sinner looks over to see the pop star seated at one of the tables, wearing a simple glam rock t-shirt with a loose pair of shorts and tennis shoes. She got up and approached him as he drew close. Verosika hugs him as she wears a big smile on her face. You came. "I wanted to see you," Naruto says with a bit of a chuckle and a grin. Releasing her grip on the Sinner, Verosika leads him over to one of the tables which they sit at before the pop star asks one of the first questions in mind. "How's our place?" "It's still good. The crew keeps it clean," Naruto says with a shrug. "You can still live there, you know." Verosika suddenly blurts out, interrupting him as she didn't like the idea of him living on his own for a number of reasons, the chief among them being his safety. Not to say he couldn't handle himself, but there were many beings of hell that outpowered him, and it was a general rule that there is safety in numbers. He frowns lightly. "You know why I can't stay in Lust. Without you there, it poses a risk for me. And I don't want to get you in trouble," he states factually. It was more or less the reason why he had to move back into Pride and seek a new job. With Verosika in rehab, his means of residing in Lust had to come to an end. As a result, he was in between jobs until recently. "It's a bullshit reason," Verosika remarks with an angry pout as he was still technically under her employ, even if she was in rehab. "I know and I feel the same way," he says apologetically. "It's been hard finding a place on my own. A lot of apartments have stupidly high prices for sinners. I think it's just the building managers I kept running into. Reminds me of a lot back when I was human. He admits with a little sigh as it definitely seemed like a lot of landlords in hell, most of whom were hellborn, held a prejudice towards sinners. She gasped soon after, fearing the worst. Don't tell me you've been sleeping on the streets. Verosika asks, thinking that he wasn't able to find a place to live. I'm not. I was able to quickly find a place thanks to a pair of coworkers of mine. Naruto replies, quelling her fears about his potentially living on the streets. Once I'm out, you're coming back to. Verosika halts when finally registering what he just said. You found a new job already? How? She asks in slight shock at him finding work so fast. Oddly the same way I found you. Through an ad. He saw the disappointed look on her face. You're not happy. The Vulpine Sinner remarks as it was clearly shown after his mentioning of having a new job. No, I'm not. Just thought. Verosika begins to say with a slight stutter. Hey, it's not like I'm not gonna see you again. It's just not gonna be every day now. Besides, you can always hire me on as extra help on occasion for your concerts or whatever, and we can hang out of course. The Vulpine Sinner interrupts, trying to put her mind at ease, getting a sigh of relief from the succubus. Seeing this and not wanting to linger on the bit of the dreary mood, Naruto went on to other topics which were able to make her smile. They ended up chatting for quite a while, to the point where Naruto was all but escorted out when visiting hours were over. With Naruto gone, Veronica made her way back towards her room, though her feelings were rather mixed given him having a new job. Yet she was still happy to see the Vulpine Sinner again. Back in her assigned room, Verosika threw herself onto her bed and situated herself. Oh, I'm gonna get carpal tunnel today. She thought with a smile as she slipped her hand into her pants, as seeing Naruto again had fired her up. During her time here, she was able to write a lot of new songs. However, other parts of her free time was her masturbating a lot with her being away from Naruto. Hell, she can still picture his beep as clear as a day. The sight of it, which convinced her to come to rehab, was practically seared into her brain. She did her best to recall how he smelled and felt. It was hard not having her full body pillow with her when in bed after all this time. Even worse when having nightmares of a litany of things. In truth, like what she admitted before coming into rehab, she's head over heels in love with him. For the longest time, in fact, she'd been attracted to him. His presence felt far different from the people she fucked in the past. However, they never fucked, and it's been driving her crazy. However, she'd been too scared to ask him out on a date and instead resorted to trying to seduce him. Mostly due to their one relationship was quite like how she and Blitzo were, and things badly fell through with that as a result. Instead, she's been putting on the moves in hopes of having him ask her out, but with no success. Realizing it now, Naruto grew used to her flirtatious nature after all this time. So whatever advances she's been making were essentially hitting a brick wall. Yet she also recalled what he said to her, of why he didn't want to have sex with her at the time. All that made her love him more. Fuck, I need you inside me. Was her thought, biting her lower lip as she continued playing with herself. Naru, baby, I need you. She called out desperately in her mind as she worked herself over, imagining it was his fingers instead of her own. Her kind has always tried to find their special one to make them really happy. Verosika had originally thought it would be with Blitzo, but that was a harsh truth to swallow as it was not meant to be. However, she thought she had another shot of actual love with Naruto, and it greatly excited her. Seriously? You're doing that this early in the day? A voice calls out, snapping the succubus out of her self-pleasure. Verosika looked over to the doorway, seeing a slim red-skinned female imp with large curled horns, red eyes with yellow sclera, sharp teeth and black claw-like fingers. On her forehead, there is a heart-shaped skull marking which was crossed out. Across her skin are white stripes, some forming crosses on her forearms. She wears a short, sleeveless dark red and white striped turtleneck dress, with few ripped areas and black thigh-high boots. She also wears black panties underneath. Aren't you supposed to be in a class or activity, Barbie? Verosika remarks in annoyance at having been interrupted. Yeah, for an odd sense of irony, Verosika came to the same rehab center as Blitzo's twin sister. Rather shocking in several ways. While Verosika's here on a drinking problem, Barbie Wire was here due to taking drugs. As much as they seemed to clash a little for various reasons as roommates tend to do, the two at least shared their mutual hatred of Blitzo. So at least that helped to a degree. If you bothered to look at the time, you would notice that I'm done with my stuff for the day. Barbie Wire pointed out as she pointed towards the nearby wall clock. Glancing over, Verosika saw how much time passed since she was masturbating. Now what got you all worked up? Said the imp as she sat on her bed. Verosika puffed out her chest, feeling triumphant with what happened earlier. I'll have you know my foxy bodyguard came to visit me today. She states with a slight smirk of superiority. That would explain the extra fishy smell. Barbie remarks with a roll of her eyes, as it was true as the whole room smelled of sex, or in this case masturbation. This got a bland look from the succubus. You have no romance in you. Veronica remarks in a dry tone. I'd get more romance out of seeing a telenovela than what I'm seeing here. Barbie says with a smirk causing Veronica to fume. The two began bickering for quite a while. Just a normal routine in their time at rehab. Meanwhile, as he goes to enter the elevator that will take him back to the Pride Ring, Naruto stops for a moment and looks back in the direction of the rehab center. Keep up the good work V, he thinks to himself, proud of how she is getting better and clean and looking forward to her being released. I'll be waiting for you, he adds before entering the elevator with everyone else and the doors closing behind him. So this part ends here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, so quickly like this video for second part of this series. And comment down below your thoughts about this series. And now it's time for me to go, bye.